Jurassic Park is a 1993 American science fiction adventure film directed by Steven Spielberg and produced by Kathleen and Gerald Molen. It is the first installment in the Jurassic Park franchise, and is based on the 1990 novel of the same name by Michael Crichton, and a screenplay written by Crichton and David Koepp. The film is set on the fictional island of Isla Nublar, located off Central America's Pacific coast near Costa Rica. There, billionaire philanthropist John Hammond and a small team of genetic scientists have created a wildlife park of de-extinct dinosaurs. When industrial sabotage leads to a catastrophic shutdown of the park's power facilities and security precautions, a small group of visitors and Hammond's grandchildren struggle to survive and escape the perilous island. Jurassic Park became the highest-grossing film released worldwide up to that time. It eventually grossed $357 million in the US and Canada. 86.2 million tickets in the US were sold in its initial theatrical run, and the film also did well internationally, ultimately earning $914 million worldwide. Jurassic Park's record was only surpassed in 1998 by Titanic, the first film to gross over $1 billion. Review aggregation website Rotten Tomatoes retrospectively gave the film a certified fresh rating of 91% based on 123 reviews, with a rating average score of 8.29 out of 10. The site's critical consensus states, Jurassic Park is a spectacle of special effects and lifelike animatronics, with some of Spielberg's best sequences of sustained awe and sheer terror since Jaws. Metacritic gave the film a weighted average score of 68 out of 100, based on reviews from 20 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Audiences surveyed by CinemaScore gave the film a grade A on a scale of A to F. In March 1994, Jurassic Park won all 3 Academy Awards for which it was nominated: Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Visual Effects. As one of the world's most influential films in both science fiction and special effects, it gives me great pleasure to say the words, welcome to Jurassic Park. We find ourselves in a jungle at night. An eyeball, big, yellowish, distinctly inhuman, stares raptly between wooden slats, part of a large crate. The eye darts from side to side, alert as hell. A legend tries to place us. Isla Nublar, 120 miles west of Costa Rica. But to us, it's still the middle of nowhere. It's quiet for a second. A roar arises up from the jungle, deafening. The trees shake as something very, very large plows ahead through them, right at us. Every head gathered in this little clearing snaps, turned in the direction of the sound, as it bursts through the trees. It's a bulldozer. It drops its scoop and pushes forward into the back end of a crate, shoveling it across the jungle floor towards an impressive fenced structure that towers over an enclosed section of thick jungle. There's a guard tower at one end of this, holding open, that makes it look like San Quentin. The bulldozer pushes forward into the back end. The crate thuds to the floor. A door slides open in the pen, making a space as big as the end of the crate. Nobody moves for a second. A grim-faced guy who seems to be in charge, Robert Muldoon, although we don't know it yet. Muldoon says, "Pushing team, move in. Loading." The movement has agitated whatever is inside the crate, and the whole thing shivers as growls and snaps come from inside. Everyone moves back. "All right, steady. Push. Don't let her know you're afraid. Pick." The men go back to the crate and begin to push it into the slot. The crate thuds up against the opening. A green light on the side of the pen shows up, showing contact has been made. From inside the crate, we get glimpses of what's on the other side of those wooden slates. Jungle foliage. men with rifles, searching searchlights. The view is herky-jerky as the crate pulls into position. Well, locked and loaded, team. Stepping away. Joffrey, raise the gate. A worker climbs to the top of the crate. The searchlights are trained on the door. The riflemen throw the bolts on their rifles and crack their stun guns, sending arcs of current cracking through the air. The worker gets ready to grab the gate when all at once, a roar from inside the crate, and the panel flies out of his hands and smacks into him, knocking him clear off the crate. Now everything happens at once. The worker thuds to the jungle floor. The crate jerks away from the mouth of the holding pen. A flash. An alarm buzzer sounds. And a claw slashes out from inside of the crate. It sinks into the ankle of the worker, dragging him toward the dark mouth between the crate and the pen. The worker screams and paws the dirt, leaving long claw marks as he is rapidly dragged toward the crate. Muldoon shouts orders. "Tasers, get in there! God damn it!" They fire their guns. The wood of the crate splinters. Muldoon runs in and grabs the worker, trying to pull him free. The wild arcs of current from the stun gun flash and crack all around, but in a second, the worker is gone. Mano de Dios Amber Mine, Dominican Republic. Donald Genaro, 40, in a city's man idea of hiking clothes and a $100 haircut, approaches on a raft being pulled across a river by two men. On the hillside, Juan Rostaño, 30-ish, Costa Rican, a smart-looking guy with worker's clothes, is waiting for him. Rostaño says, "Apuesto 1,000 pesos que se cae." I bet 1,000 pesos he falls. Genaro finally lands, and Rostaño helps him off the raft. "Hello, Juanito." "Hola, bienvenido." Rostaño leads Genaro toward the mine. Dozens of shirtless workers claw and scrape at the rocky mountainside. That is the site of an extensive mining operation. The work is all done by hand, pick and shovel instead of dynamite and bulldozer. "What's this I hear at the airport? Hammond's not even here?" He sends his apologies. "You're telling me that we're facing a $20 million lawsuit from the family of that injured worker, and Hammond couldn't even be bothered to see me?" "He had to leave early to be with his daughter. She's getting a divorce." "I understand that." Genaro almost falls. Rostaño helps him. "The underwriters of the park feel the accident raises some very serious questions about the safety of the park, and they're making the investors very anxious. I had to promise I would conduct a thorough on-site inspection." "Hammond hates inspections. They slow everything down." "Juanito, if they pull the funding, that will really slow things down." A worker hurries up to them and busts into the conversation, breathless. "Jefe, encontramos otro mosquito, en el mismo sitio." "Chief, we found another mosquito in the same place." "Seguro? Muéstrame?" "Are you sure? Show me." The worker and Rostaño scramble back deeper into the mine. Rostaño calls back over his shoulder to Genaro. "It seems like it's going to be a good day after all. They found another one. Come on." Genaro struggles to keep up. Rostaño and Genaro move into the dark, dripping cave, where at least a dozen other workers are gathered in a tight circle, staring at something intently. Rostaño fights his way to the center of the group. One of the workers hands him something, and Rostaño examines it carefully. It's a chunk of amber, a shiny yellow rock about the size of a $50. Genaro says, "If two experts sign off on the island, the insurance guys will back off. I already got Ian Malcolm, but they think he's too trendy. They want Alan Grant." "Grant? You'll never get him out of Montana." "Why not?" "Because he's like me. He's a digger." Rostaño turns and holds the amber up to the sunlight, streaming through the mouth of the cave. With the light pouring through it, the amber is translucent, and we can see something inside this strange stone. A huge mosquito, long dead, entombed there. He smiles. "Ay, qué lindo eres, vas a hacer a mucha gente feliz." "Oh, you're so beautiful. You will make a lot of people." Somewhere far away, an artist's camel hair brush carefully sweeps away sand and rock to slowly reveal the dark curve of a fossil. It's a claw.
A dentist's pick gently lifts it from the place it has laid for millions of years. Pull up to reveal a group of diggers working on a large skeleton. All we see are the tops of their hats. The paleontologist working on the claw lays it in his hand. Thoughtfully, 4 complete skeletons, such a small area, the same horizon. They died together? Ellie says. The taphonomy sure looks that way. If they died together, they lived together. Suggests some kind of social order. Dr. Alan Grant, mid-30s, a ragged-looking guy with intense concentration you wouldn't want to get in the way of, carefully examines a claw. Dr. Ellie Sattler, working with him, leans in close and studies it too. She paints the exposed bone with rubber cement. Ellie in her late 20s, athletic-looking. There's an impatience about Ellie, as if nothing in life happens quite fast enough for her. Her face is almost pressed up against his. She's sitting so close. They hunted as a team. The dismembered Tenontosaurus bone over there, that's lunch. But what killed our raptors in a lake bed in a bunch like this? We better come up with something that makes sense. A drought. The lake was shrinking. That's good. That's right. They died around a dried up puddle without fighting each other. This is looking good. From the bottom of the hill, a voice shouts to them. Dr. Grant, Dr. Sattler, we're ready to try again. Grant signs and sits up, stretching out his back. I hate computers. He shoves the claw absent-mindedly into his pocket, and he and Ellie walk towards the source of the voice. As they walk, we get our first look at the Badlands. Exposed outcroppings of crumbling limestone stretch for miles in every direction. Not a tree or a bush in sight. In the dig itself, the ground is checkered with excavations everywhere. There's a base camp with 5 or 6 teepees, a flapping mess tent, a few cards, a flatbed truck with wrapped fossils loaded on it, and a mobile home. There are a dozen volunteers of all ages at work in various places around the dig. The volunteers are from all walks of life. Dinosaur buffs. 3 or 4 of them have children with them, and the kids run around like in a giant sandbox. Grant, Ellie, and a volunteer walk down the hill. Grant spots a kid kicking dirt onto one of the digs. He notices and frowns. Hey, what's that kid doing? What are you doing there? Excuse me. Can you just back off? This is very fragile. Are you out of your mind? Get off that and go find your parents. Did you see what he just did? The kid stomps away, pissed off. Asshole. Why do they have to bring their kids? You could hire your help, but there's 4 summers of work here with the money for one, and you say it's a learning experience, sort of a vacation, and you get volunteers with kids. He and Ellie arrive to where several volunteers are clustered around a computer terminal that's set up on a table in a small tent, its flaps lashed open. Ready to give it a shot, Jerry? A little girl moves a little too close to the machine. Want to watch the computer? Ellie quietly moves out of Grant's way, to a place she can see. Thumper ready? Ready. Fire! The volunteer throws a switch on a machine that looks a bit like a floor buffer. The whole thing hops into the air as it drives a soft lead pellet into the earth with a tremendous force. There's a dull thud, the earth seems to vibrate, and all eyes turn to the computer screen. How long does this usually take? It should be immediate return. You shoot the radar into the ground, the bone bounces back. The screen suddenly comes alive, yellow contour lines tracing across it in 3 waves, detailing a dinosaur skeleton. This new program's incredible! A few more years of development, you won't have to dig anymore. Grant looks at him. His expression is positively wounded. Well, where's the fun in that? It looks a little distorted, but I don't think that's the computer. Ellie shakes her head. Post-mortem contraction of the posterior neck ligaments, to Grant. Velociraptor? Yes. Good shape, too. 5, 6 feet high. I'm guessing 9 feet long. Look at the... Grant points to a part of the skeleton, but when his finger touches the screen, the computer beeps at him and the image changes. He pulls his hand back, as if it shocked him. What did you do? He touched it. Dr. Grant is not machine compatible. They've got it in for me. The volunteer laughs and touches a different part of the screen, which brings back the original image. Grant continues, but doesn't get as close. Look at the half-moon-shaped bone on the wrist. No wonder these guys learned to fly. The group laughs. Grant is surprised. Now seriously. Show of hands. How many of you have read my book? Everyone stops laughing and looks away. Ellie raises her hand supportively. So does the volunteer. Grant sighs. Great. Well, maybe dinosaurs have more in common with present-day birds than reptiles. Look at the public bone. It turns backwards, just like a bird. The vertebrae, full of hollows and air sacs, just like the bird. Even the word raptor means bird of prey. The kid steps forward and looks at the computer skeleton critically. That doesn't look very scary. More like a 6-foot turkey. Everyone sort of draws in their breath and steps aside, revealing the kid, standing alone. Grant turns to the kid, lowers his sunglasses, and stares at him like he just came from another planet. Grant strolls over to the kid, puts his arms around his shoulders in a friendly way. Try to imagine yourself in the Jurassic period. Ellie rolls her eyes. Here we go. You get your first look at the 6-foot turkey as you move into a clearing. But Raptor, he knew you were there a long time ago. He moves like a bird, lightly bobbing his head, and you keep still because you think maybe his visual acuity is based on movement, like a T-Rex, and he'll lose you if you don't move. But no, not Velociraptor. You stare at him, and he just stares back. That's when the attack comes. Not from the front. No, not from the side. From the other 2 raptors you didn't even know were there. Grant walks around the kid. Velociraptor's a pack hunter, you see. He uses coordinated attack patterns, and he's out in force today. He slashed at you with his... He takes the claw from his pocket and holds it at the front of the raptor's 3-toed foot. A 6-inch retractable claw like a razor on the middle toe. They don't bother to bite the jugular like a lion. They just slash. Here, here. He points to the kid's chest and thigh. Or maybe across the belly, spilling your intestines. Point is, you're alive when they start to eat you. Whole thing took about 4 seconds. The kid is on the verge of tears. So try to show a little respect. And with that, he walks back across the camp, returning to his skeleton. Ellie hurries to catch up with him. If you really wanted to scare the kid, you could have just pulled a gun on him. Ha, yeah, I know. Kids. You want to have one of those? Well, not one of those. Well, yeah. Possibly at some point could be a good thing. What's so wrong with kids? Oh, Ellie, look, they're noisy, they're messy, they're sticky, they're expensive. Cheap, cheap, cheap. And they smell. Oh my God, they do not smell. They do smell. Some of them smell. Babies smell. Alright, the one on the airplane had an accident, but usually babies don't smell. They know very little about the Jurassic period. They know a lot less about the Cretaceous. The what? The Cretaceous. Anything else, you old fossil? Yeah, plenty. Some of them can't walk. It frustrates me so much that I love you, that I need to strangle you right now. Ellie playfully takes Grant's hat off and gives him a tight hug. They kiss. A strange wind seems to be whipping up. Grant and Ellie look around confused. The wind is getting stronger, blowing dirt and sand everywhere, filling in everything they've dug out, blowing the protective canvases off. Now there's a more familiar roar, and they look up and see it. A huge helicopter descending on the camp. Ellie turns to the volunteers. Get some canvases and cover anything that's exposed. Grant's already on it, trying to desperately protect the skeletons he's excavating. He looks up at the helicopter and shouts, shaking his fist. Down at the base camp, the helicopter has landed. The pilot is already out, watching as Grant comes down from the mountaintop like Moses steaming. Grant gestures wildly at him to turn the chopper off. The pilot points timidly to a mobile home across the camp. Grant runs to the trailer. The doors to the trailer slap open, and Grant storms in. What the hell do you think you're doing in here? The trailer serves as the dig's office. There are several long wooden tables set up, every inch covered with bone specimens that are nearly laid out, tagged and labeled. Further along are ceramic dishes and crocks, soaking other bones in acid and vinegar. There's old dusty furniture at one end of the trailer, and a refrigerator. A man roots around in the refrigerator. His back is to us. grumbling about the contents, which are mostly beer. His hands fall across a bottle of expensive champagne in the back. Aha! He pulls it out. The cork pops. The man turns around. John Hammond, 70-ish, sprightly as hell, with bright shining eyes that say, "Follow me." Grant stares incredulously at the man, holding his champagne bottle without an invitation. "Hey, we were saving that." "For today, I guarantee it." "And who in God's name do you think you are?" "John Hammond, and I'm delighted to finally meet you in person, Dr. Grant." Grant is struck silent. He shakes his head, staring dumbly. "Mr. Hammond?" Hammond looks around the trailer approvingly at the enormous amount of work the bones represent. "I can see my $50,000 a year is being well spent." The door slaps open again and Ellie comes in, just as pissed off as Grant was. "Okay, who's the jerk?" This is our paleobotanist, Dr. Ellie. Sattler." "Dr. Sattler, Ellie, this is Mr. Hammond." "John Hammond." "Did I say jerk?" "I'm sorry for the dramatic entrance, but I'm in a hurry. Will you have a wee bit of a drink now and then?" Hammond begins to walk into the kitchen, making himself at home. Ellie follows him, tries to help. Grant settles behind a table. "Come along then, don't let it get warm. Come on, both of you, sit down." As Hammond moves, they notice he walks with a slight limp and uses a cane. For balance or style, it's hard to say which. "I have samples all over the kitchen." She takes some stones out of one of the glasses. "Come along, I know my way around a kitchen. Come along." Ellie goes around towards Grant. She grabs a bottle of water. They look at each other, really aback by this guy's bravado, and sits down. Hammond dries the glasses. "Well now, I'll get right to the point. I like you, both of you. I can instantly tell with people. It's a gift. I own an island off the coast of Costa Rica. I leased it from the government and spent the last 5 years setting up a kind of biological preserve down there. Really spectacular. Spared no expense. It makes the one I had in Kenya look like a petting zoo. No doubt that sooner or later our attractions will drive the kids right out of their minds." "And what are those?" "Smaller versions of adults, honey." He gives her a dirty look. "Not just for kids, for everyone. We're going to open next year, unless the lawyers kill me first. I don't care for lawyers. You?" I don't really know any. Well, I'm afraid I do. There's one, a particular pebble in my shoe. He represents my investors. He says they'll insist on outside opinions." "What kind of opinions?" "Not to put a fine point on it, your kind. Let's face it, in your particular field, you're the top minds. If I could just get the two of you to sign off on the park, give a wee testimonial, I could get back on schedule." He Americanizes his pronunciation. "Schedule." "Why would they care what we think?" "What kind of park is it?" Hammond smiles. "Well, it's right up your alley." He hands Grant a drink. "Look, why don't both you, the pair of you, come on down for the weekend? Love to have an opinion of a paleobotanist as well." He hands Ellie a drink. "I've got a jet standing by at the chateau." He jumps up and sits on the counter. "No, I'm sorry, that wouldn't be possible. We've just discovered a new skeleton, and—" Hammond pours himself a drink. "I could compensate you by fully funding your dig. This would be an awfully unusual time. For a further 3 years. Grant goes, "Ooh," as Ellie elbows him hard in the ribs. Cut to a cafe. Dennis Nedry is in his late 30s. A big guy with a constant smile that could either be laughing with you or at you. You can never tell. He sits at a table in front of a Central American cafe, eating breakfast. Nedry looks up and sees a man get out of a taxi. Louis Dodgson. 50-ish, wearing a large straw hat and looking almost too much like an American tourist. Dodgson clutches an attaché case close to him as he scans the cafe furtively. Nedry laughs, shakes his head, and waves to him. Dodgson! Dodgson hurries over to the table. You shouldn't use my name. Dodgson. We got a Dodgson here! See? Nobody cares. Nice hat. What are you trying to look like, a secret agent? Dodgson ignores that, setting his attaché case next to the table, and slides it towards Nedry. $7.50. Nedry smiles and pulls the attaché closer to him. On delivery, 50,000 more for every viable embryo. That's 1.5 million if you get all 15 species off the island. Oh, I'll get 'em all. Remember, viable embryos. They're no use to us if they don't survive. How am I supposed to transport them? Dodgson pulls out an ordinary can of shaving cream from a shoulder bag he carries and sets it on the table. The bottom screws open. It's cooled and compartmentalized inside. They can even check it if they want. Press the top. Nedry presses the top of the can, and real shaving cream comes out. He grins, impressed. While Dodgson talks, Nedry looks around for somewhere to wipe the shaving cream and ends up dumping it on top of someone's jello in a dessert tray next to him. That's enough coolant gas for 36 hours. Nedry looks at the can. What? No menthol? Mr. Nedry, the embryos have to be back here in San Jose by then. That's up to your guy on the boat. 7 o'clock tomorrow night at the East Dock. Make sure he got it right. I was wondering, how are you planning to beat the security? I got an 18-minute window. 18 minutes, and your company catches up on 10 years of research. A waiter arrives and puts the check down on the table between them. Nedry looks down at it pointedly, then up at Dodgson. Don't get cheap on me, Dodgson. Dodgson rolls his eyes and picks up the check. That was Hammond's mistake. Grant, Ellie, Reynaldo, and Malcolm are huddled in the back of a chopper. Hammond is in the front with the pilot. There are 2 other passengers as well. Donald Reynaldo, the lawyer from the amber mine, now dressed in safari clothes. Everything straight from Banana Republic. The other, Dr. Ian Malcolm, 40-ish, dressed all in black, with snakeskin boots and sunglasses. Malcolm, who finds it hard to take his eyes off Ellie, leans over and shouts over the engine whine. So you 2 dig up dinosaurs? Try to. Malcolm laughs, finding this very amusing, which confuses Grant. Hammond turns around annoyed. You'll have to get used to Dr. Malcolm. He suffers from a deplorable excess of personality, especially for a mathematician. Chaotician, actually. Chaotician. Hammond snorts, not even bothering to cover his contempt for Malcolm. John doesn't subscribe to chaos, particularly what it has to say about his little science project. Codswell up, Ian. You'll never even come close to explaining these concerns of yours about this island. I certainly have, very clearly, because of the behavior of the system in phase space. Hammond just waves him off. A load, if I may say so, of fashionable number crunching. That's all it is. Malcolm pokes at Hammond's knee. John! Hammond pushes him away. Don't do that. Dr. Grant, Dr. Sattler, you've heard of chaos theory? Ellie shakes her head. No. Non-linear equations, strange attractions? Again, she shrugs. Dr. Sattler, I refuse to believe that you are not familiar with the concept of attraction. Grant just rolls his eyes and Malcolm gives her an oily grin, but Ellie smiles, enjoying Grant's jealousy. Hammond turns to Reynaldo and gives him a dirty look. I bring scientists, you bring a rock star. Hammond looks out of the windshield and claps his hand excitedly. There it is! Up ahead the others see it. Isla Nublar. It's a smallish island, completely ringed by black clouds that give it a lush, mysterious feel. The pilot pulls up over a spot in the clouds and starts to descend fast. Bad wind shears. We have to drop pretty fast. Hold on. This can be a little thrilling. The helicopter drops like a stone. Outside the windows, they can see a cliff walls racing by uncomfortably close, hitting both up and down drafts. Only Hammond still feels chatty. We're planning an airstrip, on pilings, extended out in the ocean 12,000 feet. Like LaGuardia, only a lot safer. What do you think? They don't answer, they just hold on. As they near the ground, a luminous white cloud cross appears below them. A landing pad shining through the plexiglass bubble on the floor of the chopper. The cross grows rapidly larger as the chopper plummets, but a sudden updraft catches them and they bounce skyward for a moment and then drop again even faster if possible, before landing with a hard bump. The chopper plummets and finally lands. One of the workers opens the door and the group gets out. Hammond looks out proudly. Two large open-top jeeps roar down the hilltop away from the landing cross as the helicopter engines whine back to life and the rotors start to spin again. Ellie, Grant, and Malcolm hold on tight in the front of the jeep. Hammond and Genaro are in the rear jeep. Both cars have drivers. They pass through an enormous gate and a 30-foot-high fence, which is closed behind them by two park attendants. There are large electrical insulators on the fences, warning lights that strobe importantly in clear signs, electrified fence, 10,000 volts. In the rear jeep, Genaro regards the fences critically. The full 50-mile of perimeter fence are in place. And the concrete moats, and the motion sensor tracking systems. Donald, dear boy, do try to relax and enjoy yourself. Let's get something straight, John. This is not a weekend excursion. This is a serious investigation of the stability of the island. Your investors, whom I represent, are deeply concerned. 48 hours from now, if they, he gestures to Grant, Ellie, and Malcolm, aren't convinced, I'm not convinced. And I can shut you down, John. 48 hours from now, I'll be accepting your apologies. Now get out of the way so I can see them. He shoves Genaro aside to get a clear view of Grant, Ellie, and Malcolm. I wouldn't miss this for the world. The jeeps wind their way along a mountain road. In the lead jeep, Ellie stares off to the right, fascinated by the thick tropical plant life around them. She tilts her head, as if something's wrong with this picture. She reaches out and grabs hold of a leafy branch as they drive by, tearing it from a tree. In the rear jeep, Hammond, watching Grant, signals to his driver. Just stop here, slow down, slow. He slows down and then stops. So does the front jeep. In the front jeep, Ellie stares at the leaf, amazed, running her hand lightly over it. Alan! But Grant's not paying attention. He's staring too, out the other side of the jeep. Grant notices that several of the tree trunks are leafless, just as thick as the other trees, but gray and bare. Ellie's still staring at the leaf. This shouldn't be here! Grant twists in his seat as the jeep stops and looks at one of the gray tree trunks. Riveted, he slowly stands up in his seat, as if to get closer. He moves to the top of the seat, practically on his tiptoes. He raises his head. Looking up at the length of the trunk, he looks higher, and higher, and higher. That's no tree trunk. It's a leg. Grant's jaw drops. His head falls all the way back, and he looks even higher above the tree line. Ellie's still looking at the leaf. This species of vermiform has been extinct since the Cretaceous period. This thing... Grant, never tearing his eyes from the brachiosaur, reaches over and grabs Ellie's head, turning it to face the animal. She sees it and drops the leaf. Oh my God. Grant lets out a long, sharp, "Ha!" a combination laugh and shout of joy. He gets out of the jeep, and Ellie follows. Grant points to the thing and manages to put together his first words since its appearance. That's a dinosaur! There is indeed a dinosaur, chewing the branches. Technically, it's a brachiosaur of the sauropod family, but we've always called it Brontosaurus. It crushes the branch in its mouth, which is some 35 feet up off the ground. At the end of its long, arching neck, it stares down at the people in the car with a pleasant, stupid gaze. Ellie looks up at the sauropods in wonder. They're pretty light on their feet, a far cry from the sluggish, lumbering brutes we would have expected. Hammond gets out of his jeep and comes back to join them. He looks like a proud parent showing off the kid. Ian Malcolm looks at Hammond, amazed, and with an expression that is a mixture of admiration and rapprochement. You did it! You crazy son of a bitch, you did it. Grant and Ellie continue walking, following the dinosaur. The movement! The agility! You're right! In their amazement, Grant and Ellie talk right over each other. Ellie, we can tear up the rule book on cold-bloodedness. It doesn't apply. They're totally wrong. This is a warm-blooded creature. They're totally wrong. They were wrong. Case closed. This thing doesn't live in a swamp to support its body weight, for God's sake. Several of the top branches are suddenly ripped away. Another sauropod, reaching for a branch high above their heads, stands effortlessly on its hind legs. That thing's got, 27-foot neck? The brachiosaur? 30. Grant and Ellie continue to walk. And you're going to sit there and try to tell me it can push blood up a 30-foot neck without a 4-chambered heart and get around like that? Like that? To Hammond. This is like a knockout punch for warm-bloodedness. Hammond proudly says, We clocked the T-Rex at 32 miles an hour. You've got a T-Rex? He's got a T-Rex? He's got a... To Grant. Say again? Yes, we've got a T-Rex. Grant feels faint. He sits down on the ground. Honey, put your head between your knees and breathe. Hammond walks in front of them and looks out. Dr. Grant and Dr. Sadler, welcome to Jurassic Park. They turn and look at the view again. It's a beautiful vista, reminiscent of an African plain. A whole herd of dinosaurs crosses the plain, maybe 100 that we see in a quick glance alone. Ellie, they're moving in herds. They do move in herds. We were right. How did you do it? How did you do this? Hammond says, I'll show you. Finally, we notice Genaro, who has sort of faded into the background while the others reacted. He's just staring, a look of absolute rapture on his face. He speaks in a voice that is hushed and reverent. We are going to make a fortune with this place. The main of Jurassic Park is a large area with 3 main structures connected by walkways and surrounded by 2 impressive fences. The outer fence is almost 20 feet high. Outside the fences, the jungle has been encouraged to grow naturally. The largest building is the Visitors Center, several stories tall, its walls still skeletal, unfinished. There's a huge glass rotunda in the center. The second building looks like a private residence, a compound unto itself, with smoked windows and its own perimeter fence. The third structure isn't really a building at all, but the impressive cage we saw earlier, overgrown inside with thick jungle foliage. The Jeep pulls up front of the Visitors Center. Hammond leads Grant, Ellie, Genaro, and Malcolm up the stairs, talking as he goes. 2 ladies open the doors to the Visitors Center. The lobby of the still unfinished Visitors Center is a high-ceilinged place, and has to be, to house its central feature, a large skeleton of a tyrannosaur that is attacking a bellowing sauropod. Workmen in the basket of a condor crane are still assembling skeletons. A staircase climbs. The most advanced amusement park in the world, combining all the latest technologies. I'm not talking rides, you know. Everybody has rides. We make a living on biological attractions so astonishing they'll capture the imagination of the entire planet. Grant stares up at the dinosaur skeletons and just shakes his head. Ellie catches his reaction. So, what are you thinking? We're out of a job. Ian Malcolm pops in between them. Didn't you mean extinct? Ellie and Malcolm move on ahead. Why don't you all sit down? Grant, Ellie, and Malcolm take their seats in the front row of the 50-seat auditorium. Genaro sits behind them. Hammond walks over to the giant screen in front of them. Behind him, a huge image of himself beams down at him from a giant television screen. Hello, John. Say hello, he says to the group. Then, fumbling with his 3x5 cards, I've got the lines. He scans them looking for his place. The screen Hammond continues without him. Fine, I guess. But how did I get here? Here, let me show you. First, I'll need a drop of blood. Your blood. The screen Hammond extends his finger, and the stage Hammond reaches out and mimes picking it with a needle. Ouch, John, that hurt. Relax, John, that's all part of the miracle of cloning. While the two Hammonds rattle on, the screen image splits into 2 Hammonds, then 4, then 8, and so on, like a shampoo commercial. Grant, Ellie, and Malcolm huddled together excitedly in the audience. Cloning from what? Loy extraction has never recreated an intact DNA strand. Not without massive sequence gaps. Paleo DNA? From what source? Where do you get 100 million year old? Shh, says Hinaro. The screen Hammond is joined by another figure, this one animated. Mr. DNA is a cartoon character, a happy-go-lucky double helix strand of recombinant DNA. Mr. DNA jumps onto the screen Hammond's head and slides down his nose. Well, Mr. DNA, where'd you come from? From your blood. Just one drop of your blood contains billions of strands of DNA, the building blocks of life. Mr. DNA has taken over the show and is speaking to the audience from the screen. A DNA strand like me is a blueprint for building a living thing, and sometimes animals that went extinct millions of years ago, like dinosaurs, left their blueprints behind for us to find. We just had to know where to look. The screen image changes from animated to a nature photography look. It's an extreme close-up of a mosquito. Its fangs suck deep into some animal's flesh, its body pulsing and engorging with blood. 100 million years ago, they were mosquitoes, just like today. And just like today, they fed on the blood of animals, even dinosaurs. The camera races back to show the mosquito is perched on top of a giant animated brachiosaur. The image changes to another close-up, this one of a tree branch, its bark glistening with golden sap. Mr. DNA leaps on the sap. Sometimes, after biting a dinosaur, the mosquito would land on the branch of a tree and then get stuck in the sap. The engorged mosquito lands in the tree sap and gets stuck. So is Mr. DNA. He tugs his legs, but they stay stuck. Whoa! Now the tree sap flows over them, covering up Mr. DNA and the mosquito completely. Mr. DNA shouts from inside the tree sap. After a long time, the tree sap will get hard and become fossilized, just like a dinosaur bone, preserving the mosquito inside. The movie transitions to a science laboratory. The place buzzes with activity. Everywhere there are piles of amber, tagged and labeled with scientists in white coats examining it under microscopes. One scientist moves a complicated drill apparatus next to the chuck of amber with a fossilized mosquito inside and bores into the side of it. Mr. DNA escapes through the drill hole as the scientist moves the amber onto a microscope and peers through the eyepiece. This fossilized tree sap, which we call amber, waited millions of years with the mosquito inside, until Jurassic Park's scientists came along. Through the microscope, we see the greatly enlarged image of a mosquito through the lens. Using sophisticated techniques, they extract the preserved blood from the mosquito, and a long needle is inserted through the amber into the thorax of the mosquito and makes an extraction. Bingo! Dino DNA. Mr. DNA jumps down in front of DNA data as it races by at headache speed. He holds his head, dizzied by it. The full DNA strand contains 3 billion genetic codes. If we looked at screens like these once a second for 8 hours a day, it'd take 2 years to look at the entire strand. It's that long. And since it's so old, it's full of holes. That's where our geneticists take over. Scientists toil in a lab with 2 huge white towers at either side. Thinking machine supercomputers and gene sequencers break down the strand in minutes. One scientist in the back has his arms encased in 2 long rubber tubes. He's strapped into some bizarre apparatus, staring into a complex headpiece and moving his arms gently, like Tai Chi movements. And virtual reality displays show our geneticists the gaps in the DNA sequence. Since most animal DNA is 90% identical, we use the complete DNA of a frog. On the VR display, we see an actual DNA strand, except it has a big hole in the center, where the vital information is missing. Mr. DNA bounds into the frame, carrying a bunch of letters in one hand. He puts it in the gap and turns back against it, grunting as he shoves it into place. To fill the holes and complete the code. Finally got it. He brushes his hands off, satisfied. Now we can make a baby dinosaur. The scientists look at each other, not sure. All this has some dramatic music. Da-dum, 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 march or something. It's not written yet, and the tour moves on. He throws a switch, and a safety bar appears out of nowhere and drops over their seats, clicking into place. For your own safety. The row of seats moves out of the auditorium. The row of seats moves slowly past a row of double-paned glass windows within a large sign that reads, Genetics, Fertilization, Hatchery. Inside, technicians work at microscopes. In the back is a section entirely lit by blue ultraviolet light. Mr. DNA voice continues over a speaker in each seat. Our fertilization department is where the dinosaur DNA takes the place of the DNA of an unfertilized emu or ostrich egg. And then it's on to the nursery, where we welcome the dinosaurs back into the world. Hinaro has a wondrous grin plastered on his face, just loving everything now. This is overwhelming, John. Are these characters, animatronics? No, says Hammond. We don't have any animatronics here. These are real miracle workers of Jurassic Park. Grant, Ellie, and Malcolm are frustrated, leaning forward, straining against the safety bars for a better look, but the cars keep going. Wait a minute. How do you interrupt the cellular mitosis? Can't we see the unfertilized host eggs? But the cars are already moving on to another set of windows, which give a glimpse into what looks like a control room. Shortly. Mr. DNA continues. Our control room contains some of the most sophisticated automation ever attempted. Grant strains to look back in the lab, but the cars move past again, no intention of slowing down. Can you stop these things? Sorry, it's kind of a ride. To Malcolm, let's get out of here. The two of them team up on the safety bars. Grant shoves his all the way back with one foot, and Malcolm does the same. They stand up and head for the door of the hatchery. Hey, you can't do that. Too late. Ellie slips out from under her safety bar too, and stomps right across Hanaro's seat. Can they do that? They reach the door to the hatchery. Grant tries to shove it open, but it just thuds. He rattles the handle, but the door won't budge, as it's on some kind of security card system. Hammond steps up and takes his glasses off. Relax, Donald, relax. They're scientists. They ought to be curious. He steps up to the code box. It's a retinal scanner. He pushes various code numbers. The door opens. He steps aside, and the group eagerly goes up the stairs. Grant runs up the stairs. Malcolm and Ellie eagerly try to get a look at the lab. Hammond and Hanaro come up and join Grant at the door. John, What I'm just saying. Relax, Donald, they're scientists. Hammond reaches the door. Grant tries to pry it open. Dr. Grant, just a minute. Just a moment, dear boy. He pushes the code. The door opens. Remember what Samuel Johnson said. They step into the cubicle. Curiosity is one of the permanent and certain characteristics of a vigorous intellect. The second door opens. The hatchery is a vast open room, bathed in infrared light. Long tables run the length of the place, all covered with eggs, their pale outlines obscured by hissing low mist that's all through the room. Come on in. Hammond takes off his hat and hands it to one of the technicians. Henry Wu, late 20s, Asian American, wearing a white lab coat, works at a nearby table making notes. Good day, Henry. Ah. Good day, sir. Grant goes to a round, open with various eggs under a strong light. One of the eggs makes strong movements. A robotic arm steadies the shell. My God, look! Hammond, Ellie, and Malcolm join him, as does Henry Wu. Ah, perfect timing. I'd hoped they'd hatch before I had to go to the boat. Henry, why didn't you tell me? You know I insist on being here when they're born. Hammond puts on a pair of plastic gloves. The egg begins to crack. The robotic arm moves away. A baby dinosaur tries to get out, just its head sticking out of the shell. Hammond reaches down and carefully breaks away egg fragments, helping the baby dinosaur out of its shell. Come on, then. Out you come. They imprint on the first living creature they come in contact with. That helps them to trust me. I've been present for the birth of every animal on the island. Just look at that. Surely not the ones that have bred in the wild. Actually, they can't breed in the wild, says Wu. Population control is one of our security precautions here. There is no unauthorized breeding in Jurassic Park. Grant and Ellie exchange a look. She manages not to smile. How do you know they can't breed? Because all the animals in Jurassic Park are females. We've engineered them that way. Hammond keeps his attention trained on the new dinosaur. There you are. Out you come. Oh my God. Could we have a tissue, please? Right away. Coming right up. The animal is now free. Hammond sets it down carefully next to its shell. Grant picks it up and holds it in the palm of his hand under the incubator's heat light. Blood temperature feels like high 80s. Whoa! 91. Grant picks up the large broken half shell, but the robotic arm snatches it back out of his hand and puts it down. Homeothermic? It holds that temperature? Incredible. Malcolm is looking at Hammond, skeptical. But again, how do you know that they're all female? Does someone go into the park and, lift up the dinosaurs' skirts? We control their chromosomes. It's not that difficult. All vertebrate embryos are inherently female anyway. It takes an extra hormone at the right development stage to create a male, and we simply deny them that. Your silence intrigues me. John, the kind of control you're attempting is not possible. If there's one thing the history of evolution has taught us, it's that life will not be contained. Life breaks free. It expands to new territories. It crashes through barriers, painfully, maybe even dangerously, and, well, there it is. Ellie listens to him, impressed. Watch her head. Support her head. Grant, ignoring the others, picks up the baby dinosaur and holds it on the palm of his hand under the incubator's heat light. He spreads the tiny animal out on the back of his hand and delicately runs his finger over the tail, counting the vertebrae. A look of puzzled recognition crosses his face. You're implying that a group composed entirely of females will breed? I'm saying that life finds a way. You can't control everything. I agree with that. I like that. She walks over to Malcolm. He smiles at her too, warmly. You can talk. I don't know how to say it. You're just articulate. You say everything that I think, that I feel. It's exciting. That's right. It will break through. I know. It's very exciting. And scary. And scary. When people try to control things that's out of their power, it's anti-nature. Anti-nature. Grant doesn't notice, as he's still obsessed with the infant dinosaur, measuring and weighing it on a nearby lab bench. He stops, a strange look on his face. He knows what animal this is, but it can't be. Grant dreads the answer. What species is this? It's a velociraptor, says Wu. Grant and Ellie turn slowly to look at each other, then look at Hammond, astonished. You bred raptors? Grant charges across the compound, a fire in his eye, ahead of Ellie, Malcolm, and Hanaro. Hammond struggles to keep up. Dr. Grant! Dr. Grant! We plan to show you the raptors later, after lunch. Grant has stopped abruptly next to the velociraptor pen, which we recognize as the heavily fortified cage we saw earlier, with the San Quentin towers at one end. Grant stands right up against the fence, eyes wide, dying for a glimpse. Hammond catches up, slightly out of breath. Dr. Grant, as I was saying, we've laid out lunch for you before you head out into the park. Alejandro, our gourmet chef. What are they doing? As they watch, a giant crane lowers something large down into the middle of the jungle foliage inside the pen. Something very large. It's a steer. The poor thing looks disconcerted as hell, flailing its legs in the air. Feeding them. Alejandro is preparing a delightful meal for us, a Chilean sea bass, I believe. Grant goes up to the viewing deck, staring as the steer disappears into the shroud of foliage. The line from the crane hangs for a moment. The jungle seems to grow very quiet. They all stare at the motionless crane line. It jerks suddenly, like a fishing pole finally getting a nibble. There's a pause, and then a frenzy. The line jerks every which way. The jungle plants sway and snap from frantic activity within. There is a cacophony of growling, snapping, wet crunches that mean the steer is literally being torn to pieces. It almost makes it worse that we can't see anything of what's going on. And then, it's quiet again. The line jerks a few times, then stops. Slowly, the sound of the jungle starts up again. Fascinating animals, fascinating. Oh my God. Give time. They'll outdraw the T-Rex. Guarantee it. I want to see them. Can we get closer? Ellie puts a hand on his arm, like calming an overexcited child. Alan, these aren't bones anymore. We're still perfecting a viewing system. The raptors seem a bit resistant to integration within the park setting. They turn. Robert Muldoon, the grim-faced man who was present at the accident in the beginning, is 40-ish, British. He joins them and takes his hat off. When Robert Muldoon, my game warden from Kenya. Bit of an alarmist, I'm afraid, but he's dealing with the raptors more than anyone. Grant introduces himself. Alan Grant. Tell me, what kind of metabolism do they have? What's their growth rate? They are lethal at 8 months, and I do lethal. I've hunted most things that can hunt you, but the way these things move... Fast for biped? Cheetah speed. 50, 60 miles per hour if they got out in the open. And they're astonishing jumpers. Yes, which is why we take extreme precautions. The viewing area below us will have 8-inch tempered glass set in reinforced steel frames to... Do they show intelligence? With a brain cavity like theirs, we always assumed that... They show extreme intelligence, even problem solving, especially the big one. We bred 8 originally, but when she came in, she took over the pride and killed all but 2 of the others. That one. When she looks at you, you can see what she's thinking. Working things out. She's the reason we have to feed 'em like this. We had them all attacking the fences when the feeders came. The fences are electrified, right? That's right, but they never attacked the same place twice. They were testing the fences for weakness. Systematically. They remembered. Behind them, the crane whirs back to life, raising the cable back out of the raptor pen. The guests turn and stare as the end portion of the cable becomes visible. The steer has been dragged completely away, leaving only the tattered, bloody harness. Hammond clasps his hands together excitedly. Who's hungry? After you, my dear. Hammond, Grant, Ellie, Malcolm, and Hinaro are eating lunch at the long table in the Visitors Center restaurant. There is a large buffet table and 2 waiters to serve them. The room is darkened and Hammond is showing slides of various scenes all around them. Hammond's own recorded voice describes current and future features of the park, while the slides flash artists. The real Hammond turns and speaks over the narration. None of these attractions have been finished yet. The park will open with the basic tour you are about to take, and then other rides will come online after 6 or 12 months. Absolutely spectacular designs, spared no expense. More slides click past. A series of graphs dealing with profits, attendance, and other fiscal projections. Donald Hinaro, who has become increasingly friendly with Hammond, even giddy, grins from ear to ear. And we can charge anything we want. 2,000 a day, 10,000 a day. People will pay it. And then there's the merchandising. Donald, this park was not built to cater only to the super rich. Everyone in the world's got a right to enjoy these animals. Sure they will. They will. We'll have a coupon day or something. Grant looks down at the plate he's eating from. It's the shape of the island itself. He looks at his drinking cup. It's got a T-Rex on it, and a splashy Jurassic Park logo. There are a stack of folded amusement park-style maps on the table in front of Grant. He picks one up. Boldly, across the top, it says, Fly United to Jurassic Park. Hammond on tape says, From combined revenue streams for all 3 parks, we should reach $8 to $9 billion a year. To Hanaro now. That's conservative, of course. There's no reason to speculate wildly. I have never been a rich man. I hear it's nice. Is it nice? Ian Malcolm, who has been watching the screens with outright contempt, snorts as if he's finally had enough. The lack of humanity before nature that's been displayed here staggers me. They all turn and look at him. Thank you, Dr. Malcolm, but I think things are a little different than you and I feared. Yes, I know. They're a lot worse. Wait a second. We haven't even seen the park yet. Just hold out your concerns until, We were invited to this island to evaluate the safety conditions of the park. Physical containment. The theories that all simple systems have complex behavior, that animals in a zoo environment will eventually begin to behave in an unpredictable fashion, have nothing to do with that evaluation. This is not some existential furlough. This is an on-site inspection. You are a doctor. Do your job. You are invalidating your own assessment. I'm sorry, John. All right, Donald, all right, but just let him talk. I want to hear all viewpoints. I truly do. Don't you see the danger, John? Inherent in what you're doing here. Genetic power is the most awesome force ever seen on this planet, but you wield it like a kid who's found his dad's gun. It is hardly appropriate to start hurtling, Excuse me. Generations before, I'll tell you. The problem with scientific power you've used is it doesn't require any discipline to attain it. You've read what others had done and you took the next step. You didn't earn the knowledge yourself, so you don't take responsibility for it. You stood on the shoulders of geniuses to accomplish something as fast as you could, and before you knew what you had, you patented it, packaged it, slapped it on a plastic lunchbox, and now you want to sell it. You don't give us our due credit. Our scientists have done things no one could ever do before. Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should. Science can create pesticides, but it can't tell us not to use them. Science can make a nuclear reactor, but it can't tell us not to build it. But this is nature. Why not give an extinct species a second chance? I mean, condors. Condors are on the verge of extinction. If I'd created a flock of them on the island, you wouldn't have any. Hold on. This is no species that was obliterated by deforestation or the building of a dam. Dinosaurs had their shot. Nature selected them for extinction. I don't understand this Luddite attitude, especially from a scientist. How could we stand in the light of discovery and not act? What's so great about discovery? It's a violent, penetrative act that scars what it explores. What you call discovery, I call the rape of the natural world. Please, let's hear something from the others. Dr. Grant, Dr. Settler? The question is, how much can you know about an extinct ecosystem, and therefore, how could you assume you can control it? You have plants right here in the building, for instance, that are poisonous. You picked them because they look pretty. But these are aggressive living things that have no idea what century they're living in and will defend themselves, violently if necessary. Exasperated, Hammond turns to Grant, who looks shell-shocked. Dr. Grant, if there's one person who can appreciate all of this... But Grant speaks quietly, really thrown by all of this. I feel elated and frightened and... The world has just changed so radically. We're all running to catch up. I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but look. He leans forward, a look of true concern on his face. Dinosaurs and man, two species separated by 65 million years of evolution, have just been suddenly thrown back into the mix together. How can we have the faintest idea of what to expect? I don't believe it. I expected you to come down here and defend me from these characters, and the only one I've got on my side is the blood-sucking lawyer. Thank you. One of the waiters whispers to Hammond. Ah, they're here. Who? Hammond, Grant, Ellie, Malcolm, and Hinaro walks out of the restaurant into the lobby of the visitors' center. They head down the stairs and past the skeletons of the dinosaurs again. You four are going to have a little company out in the park. Spend a little time with our target audience. Maybe they'll help you get the spirit of this place. What does he mean by target audience? Hammond turns towards the door of the center and throws his arms out expansively. Kids! 2 kids standing in the doorway to the center break into a broad smile. Tim, the boy, is about 9 years old. Alexis, his sister, looks around 12. Grandpa! The kids race across the lobby into Hammond's arms, knocking him over on the steps. We miss you. Thanks for the presents. We love the presents. You must be careful with me. Did you like the helicopter? It was great. It drops. We were dropping. Grant looks on. 2 modified Ford Explorers leap up out of an underground garage beneath the visitor center. They move quietly, with a faint electronic hum, and straddle a partially buried metal rail in the middle of the road. They pull to a stop where the group is gathered. Ellie is off to the side with Alexis, introducing her. Hammond is with Malcolm, Grant, and Renato. Have a heart, gentlemen. Their parents are getting a divorce. They need the diversion. Hey, where are the brakes? Brakes? No brakes. They're electric cars, guided by this track on the roadway and totally non-polluting. Top of the line. It's interactive CD-ROM. Let's see. You just touch the right part of the screen and it talks about whatever you want. Spared no expense. Have fun. I'll be watching you from the control. Come along, my dear. You'll ride in the second car. I can promise you will have a wonderful time. Oh, thank you so much. We'll see you later then. Hammond turns and heads back towards the visitor center. Malcolm, eagerly to Grant. I'll ride with Dr. Sattler. He turns and walks over to Ellie. Grant frowns, not liking this one bit. He moves to follow, but Tim cuts him off and stares up at him, wide-eyed. I read your book. Oh, yeah. Great. Grant heads for the rear car. Tim follows. You really think dinosaurs turned into birds, and that's where all the dinosaurs went? Grant opens the door of the rear car and climbs in. Tim follows. Well, a few species may have evolved, along those lines, yeah. A mechanical voice intones from inside. 2 to 4 passengers to a car, please. Children under 10 must be accompanied by an adult. Tim is right behind Grant, so Grant keeps moving. Across the back seat of the car and out the other door, but Tim follows. Because they sure don't look like birds to me. I heard a meteor hit the earth and made like 100-mile crater someplace in Mexico. Listen, Tim, which car were you planning on, whichever one you are? Grant goes to the front car again, opens the rear door, and holds it for Tim, who climbs in the back seat, rattling on and on. Then I heard about this thing in Omni, about the meteor making all this heat and made a bunch of diamond dust, and that changes the weather, and they died because of the weather. And then my teacher told me about this other book by a guy named Bacher, and then he said the dinosaurs died of a bunch of diseases. Slam! Grant closes the car door on Tim. He turns and heads for the rear vehicle, and bumps right into Lex. She points at Ellie. She said I should ride with you because it would be good for you. Grant looks over at Ellie, annoyed. She's a deeply neurotic. The Jurassic Park control room looks like a mission control for a space launch, with several computer terminals and dozens of video screens that display images of various dinosaurs, taken from all over the park. There's a large glass map of the island at the front of the room that is lit up like a Christmas tree with various colored lights, each one with a number and identification code next to it. But the place is unfinished, with unattached cables, construction materials, and ladders scattered about. The mood among the half-dozen technicians present is chaotic as they rush around with last-minute adjustments. Muldoon whisks in through the double doors. Hammond is right behind him. They go straight to the main console, where Ray Arnold, 40-ish, a chronic worrier and chainsmoker, is seated. National Weather Service is tracking a tropical storm about 75 miles west of us. Hammond sighs and looks over Arnold's shoulder. Why didn't I build in Orlando? I'll keep an eye on it. Maybe it'll swing south like the last one. Ray, start the tour program. He punches a button on the console. Hold on to your butts. With a loud chunk, the Ford Explorers start forward along the electrical pathway. Hinaro, Tim, and Lex are in the front vehicle, Grant, Ellie, and Malcolm in the rear. They pass through two enormous primitive gates, torches blazing on either side. In the rear car, the Explorers' speakers blare with fanfare of trumpets, and the interior video screen flashes, "Welcome to Jurassic Park." A familiar voice comes over the speaker. "Welcome to Jurassic Park. You are now entering the lost world of the prehistoric past, creatures long gone from the face of the earth, which you are privileged to see for the first time." Hammond watches the monitor. His grandchildren are enjoying themselves. "By the way, that's James L. Jones. We spared no expense." The fences are retaining walls covered with greenery and growth to heighten the illusion of moving through a jungle. In the front car, "The accident took place in a restricted area. It would not have been available to public access, so how can the safety of the public be called into question?" The car comes to the top of a low rise, where a break in the foliage gives them a view down a sloping field that is broken by a river. The tour voice continues. "To the right, you will see a herd of the first dinosaurs on our tour, called..." In the front car, Tim and Lex practically slam up against the windows to get a look. Hinaro keeps talking. "The safety, that's the problem I had to answer." "Shh! I can't see." "What are we looking for?" "Dilophosaurus." In the rear car, Grant... "Oh, shit. Dilophosaurus." Grant, Malcolm, and Ellie press against the windows. Down near the riverbank, there are a lot of beautiful plants, but no sign of a herd or anything. The tour voice continues anyway. "One of the earliest carnivores. We now know Dilophosaurus is actually poisonous, spitting its venom at its prey, causing blindness and eventually paralysis, allowing the carnivore to eat at its leisure. This makes Dilophosaurus a beautiful but deadly addition to Jurassic Park." Corny, scary music plays over the speaker in the front car. "There's nothing there." "Alan, where?" Grant and others sit back, disappointed. "Damn." The cars move on. As the car rolls past, we notice the headlights are on, even in the daytime. Ray Arnold watches his computer screen and the video monitors at the same time, keeping an eye on the cars as they move through the park. Hammond hovers over his shoulder. "Vehicle headlights are on and don't respond. Those shouldn't be running off the car batteries." He signs and reaches for a clipboard hanging next to his chair and jots this down. "Item 151 on today's glitch list. We've got all the problems of a major theme park and a major zoo, and the computer's not even on its feet yet." Hammond shakes his head and turns to the technician to his right, who still has his back to them, watching a Costa Rican game show on one of his monitors and drinking a Jolt Cola. "Dennis, our lives are in your hands, and you have butterfingers." The technician turns around in his chair and extends his arms in a Christ-like pose. As we get a good look at him, we get the sinking feeling that we've seen him somewhere before, and we have. Dennis Nedry is the man who accepted a suitcase full of cash in San Jose. "I am totally unappreciated in my time. We can run the whole park from this room with minimal staff for up to 3 days. You think that kind of automation is easy or cheap? You know anybody who can network 8 connection machines and debug 2 million lines of code for what I bid this job? Because I'd sure as hell like to see them try." "I'm sorry about your financial problems, I really am, but they are your problems." "You're right, John, you're absolutely right. Everything is my problem." "I will not get drawn into another financial conversation with you, Dennis. I really will not." "I don't think there's been any debate." "There's no debate." My mistakes. "I don't blame people for their mistakes, but I do ask that they pay for them." "Thanks, Dad." "Dennis, the headlights." "I'll debug the tour program when they get back, okay? It'll eat a lot of computer cycles. Part of the system may go down for a while. Don't blame me if I'm playing Muldoon, who has been hovering near the video monitors as always, turns towards them, annoyed. Quiet, all of you. They're coming. The two Ford Explorers drive along a high ridge and stop at the edge of a large open plain that is separated from the road by a 15-foot fence, clearly marked, with danger signs and ominous-looking electrical posts. Tim, Lex, and Genaro are pressed forward against the windows, eyes wide, waiting for you-know-who. In the rear car, the voice of the radio drones on, but Grant, Ellie, and Malcolm aren't even listening anymore, dying of anticipation. The mighty Tyrannosaurus arose late in dinosaur history. Dinosaurs ruled the earth for 150 million years, but it wasn't until the last... Can we turn that thing off? Ellie flips a switch and they wait in silence, except for Malcolm, who looks at the ceiling, thinking aloud. God creates dinosaurs. God destroys dinosaurs. God creates man. Man destroys God. Man... Ellie... Dinosaur eats man. Woman inherits the earth. Hold on, we'll try to tempt the Rex, Arnold says. There is a low humming sound. Out in the middle of a field is a small cage. It rises up into view, lifted on hydraulics from underground. The cage bars slide down, leaving the cage's occupant standing alone in the middle of the field. It's a goat, one leg chained to a stake. It looks around confused and bleats plaintively. In the front of the car, Lex and Tim look at the goat with widely different reactions. What's going to happen to the goat? He's going to eat the goat! And Tim, excellent. Genaro to Lex. What's the matter, kid? You never have lamb chops? I happen to be a vegetarian. In the rear car, Grant shakes his head. T-Rex doesn't want to be fed. He wants to hunt. You can't suppress 65 million years of goat. The goat waits, and waits. From the explorers, 6 faces watch it expectantly. The goat tugs on its chain. It walks back and forth nervous. It bleats. In the rear car, Grant watches, his eyes glued, his breathing becoming a little bit more rapid. In the front car, Tim and Lex can't tear their eyes away. Finally, the goat lays down. In the rear car, everyone sits back, disappointed, and as the car pulls forward to continue the tour, Malcolm picks up the microphone. Now, eventually you do plan to have dinosaurs on your dinosaur tour, right? From the control room, Hammond just shakes his head as Malcolm's voice comes through. I really hate that man. Grant gets into the seat, leaving Malcolm behind Ellie. He longingly looks out of the opposite window, while Malcolm rattles on to Ellie. You see, the Tyrannosaur doesn't obey set patterns or park schedules. It's the essence of chaos. I'm still not clear on chaos. It simply deals with unpredictability in complex systems. A butterfly can flap its wings in pecking, and in Central Park you get rain instead of sunshine. Ellie gestures with her hand to show this information has gone right over her head. I made a flyby. I go too fast. Looking out of the opposite window, Grant sees movement at the far end of a field. He sits bolt upright, trying to get a better look. Malcolm, looking for another example. He points to the glass of water. Here, give me your glass of water. He takes Ellie's hand in his own. Make like hieroglyphics. Now watch the way the drop of water falls on your hand. He flicks his fingers, and a drop falls on the back of Ellie's hand. Ready? Freeze your hand. Now I'm going to do the same thing from the exact same place. Which way is the drop going to roll off? Same way. It changed. Why? Alan, listen to this. On your hand, the amount of blood distending in your vessels, imperfections in the skin. Oh, imperfections? Microscopic. Never repeat, and vastly affect the outcome. That's why. Unpredictability. And even if we haven't seen it yet, I'm quite sure it's going on in this park right now. There is definitely something out in that field, and Grant has to see it. He jerks on the door handle and opens his door a few inches. He looks outside toward freedom, then looks around, if anyone is watching him. Malcolm lowers his voice, becoming more seductive now. Life's a lot like that, isn't it? You meet someone by chance you'll never meet again, and the course of your whole future changes. It's dynamic. It's exciting, I think. Grant throws the door open and bolts out of the moving car. There? See, I'm right again. Alan! No one could have predicted Dr. Grant would suddenly jump out of a moving vehicle. Alan! She jumps out too and follows him into the field. There's another example. In the front car, Tim says, Hey, I want to go with them. In the rear car, see? Here I am now by myself, talking to myself. That's chaos theory. What the hell am I doing here? I'm the only one who knows what's going on. He rambles on. Hammond, Muldoon, and Arnold stare at the video monitor incredulously as everyone now pours out of the cars and follows Grant down the hill. The cars roll on slowly, empty, their doors hanging open. Mr. Hammond? Stop the program! Stop the program! There you are. How many times did I tell you we needed locking mechanisms on the vehicle doors? Dennis Nedry sneaks a peek at the video monitor. It shows an image of a steel door plainly marked, embryonic cold storage, restricted. He looks to another monitor which is labeled East Dock. The monitor shows a supply ship moored at the dock. Its cargo is being uploaded, and a large group of workers is filing aboard. Nedry has something in the counter, where no one can see it. It's the can of shaving cream. Grant, Ellie, Genaro, and the kids are out in an open field, heading towards a small stand of trees. For the first time, we notice that the sky is darkening rather early in the day. Tim follows Grant's footsteps, so excited he can hardly keep his feet on the ground. So like I was saying, there's this other book by a guy named Bacher, and he said dinosaurs died a bunch of diseases, and he definitely didn't say they turned into birds. Genaro is scared as hell, following the others, but his head is darting left and right. Alan, where are we going? Do you see something? Anyone else thinks we shouldn't be out here? His book was a lot fatter than yours. Really? Yours was fully illustrated, honey. Anybody at all, feel free to speak up. Lex stumbles and Grant takes her hand to stop her from falling. She looks up at him and smiles. Grant smiles back and tries to recover his hand, but Lex holds tight. He's massively uncomfortable. Ellie notices. Suddenly, they all stop in their tracks. A huge smile spreads across the faces of both Tim and Grant. Grant walks forward. Tim follows. Timmy. Come back here, blanket head. Fearless, Tim walks forward behind Grant. Tim reaches the clearing and sees a triceratops, a big one, lying on its side, blocking the light at the end of the path. It has an enormous curved shell that flanks its head, 2 big horns over its eyes, and a third on the end of its nose. It doesn't move, just breathes, loud and raspy, blowing up little clouds of dust with every exhalation. Grant stands next to a scientist near the triceratops. Beautiful. Is it okay? Can I touch it? Sure. Grant walks next to the animal and strokes its head. Ellie moves forward to the animal. Oh, Ellie, it's so beautiful. It's the most beautiful thing I ever saw. It's my favorite. They both kneel, checking the animal. He furrows his brow, notices something. All professional curiosity now. The animal's tongue, dark and purple, droops limply from its mouth. Ellie, take a look at this. Yeah, baby girl, it's okay. She scratches the tongue with her fingernail. A clear liquid leaks from the broken blisters. Microvesicles. That's interesting. Grant, fascinated, wanders all the way around to the back of the animal. Harding joins Ellie and hands her his pen light. What are her symptoms? Imbalance, disorientation, labored breathing. Seems to happen about every 6 weeks or so. 6 weeks? She takes the penlight from the veterinarian and shines it in the animal's eyes. Are there pupillary effects from the tranquilizer? Yes, mitotic. Pupils should be constricted. These are dilated. Take a look. Ah, they are. I'll be damned. That's pharmacological. From local plant life. She turns and studies the surrounding landscape. Her mind's really at work, puzzling over every piece of foliage. Pointing. Is that West Indian lilac? Yes. We know they're toxic, but the animals don't eat them. Are you sure? I'm pretty sure. There's only one way to be positive. I need to see some droppings. You won't be able to miss them. Malcolm walks up to Ellie. Dino droppings? Yeah. She walks away. Malcolm looks on. In the control room, Hammond and Arnold are watching the video monitors, displeased about something. Arnold is looking at one that gives them a view from the beach, looking out at the ocean. The clouds beyond are almost black with tropical storm. That storm center hasn't dissipated or changed course. We're going to have to cut the tour short, I'm afraid. Pick it up again tomorrow where we left off. You're sure we have to? It's not worth taking the chance, John. Muldoon into the phone. Sustained winds 45 knots. Hammond nods. Tell them when they get back into the cars. Thanks, Steve. Into the phone. Arnold makes an announcement to the others. Ladies and gentlemen, last shuttle to the dock leaves in approximately 5 minutes. Drop what you're doing and leave now. Damn! Nedry stares at his video monitor, watching the boat. He's on the phone with the mate, whose images he can see on the monitor. The seas around the dock are much rougher now. We may have to leave as soon as the last of the workers are aboard. We're not well berthed here without a storm barrier. Nedry says in a low voice. No. You stick to the plan. You wait till they're... As the weather grows darker, Ellie, Grant, Harding, and Malcolm are grouped around an enormous spore of Triceratops excreta that stands at least waist high and is covered with buzzing flies. That's one big pile of shit. Ellie has plastic gloves on reach up to her elbows and is just withdrawing her hand from the middle of the dung. Ellie says to Harding, You're right, there's no trace of lilac berries. That's so weird, though. She shows all the classic signs of meliotoxicity. Thinking aloud, every 6 weeks. She turns and walks out into the open field a few paces, thinking. Malcolm watches her and looks back at the dung. To Grant, She's, tenacious, Malcolm says. You have no idea. Malcolm says to Ellie, You will remember to wash your hands before you eat anything? Dennis Nedry is busily and surreptitiously typing a series of commands into his console. On his screen, a cartoon hand winds up a cartoon clock, moving its second hand up to the 12, the clock rotating around to face us. It has a large green dollar sign in the middle. A big word appears on the screen, an option surrounded by forbidding red box. Execute, it says. The skies are really foreboding now, and there's a sense of growing urgency. Ellie is by the animal, a short distance away from the group. Grant is near her, thinking. Ellie, I've been thinking there's something about the periodicity that doesn't add up. I know. Tim holds one of the smooth rocks up and calls a little timidly. These look kind of familiar. Triceratops was a constant browser, and constant browsers would be constantly sick. Constantly sick. Not just every 6 weeks. Yeah, I know. I've seen pictures of these. Grant turns and looks at him a little annoyed. In your fully illustrated book. Grant just rolls his eyes, but Ellie comes over and checks out the stones. What's that? A light goes on in her eyes. Alan, gizzard stones. She throws Grant one of the stones. They look at each other in amazement. As before, when they get excited, they talk right over each other. Ellie, that's it. It explains the periodicity. The undigested state of the berries, because it's totally incidental. What are you guys saying? It's simple, see? Some animals, like her, don't have teeth. Like birds. Like birds. What happens is they swallow the stones and hold them in a muscular sac in their stomach, a gizzard. Which is called a gizzard. and it helps them mash their food. But what happens after a while? What happens is that after a while, the stones get smooth every 6 weeks, so the animal regurgitates them, barfs them up, and swallows fresh ones. And when she swallows the stones, she swallows the poison berries too. That's what makes her sick. Good work, Tim. She looks at Grant pointedly. Tim looks up at Grant too, smiling from ear to ear. Grant grunts, not so easily convinced. Thunder rumbles as the storm overhead is about to bust loose. Renato, scared of more than one thing now, puts his foot down. Doctors, if you please, I have to insist we get moving. You know, if it's all right, I'd like to stay with Dr. Harding and finish with the trike. Is that okay? Sure, I've got a gas-powered jeep. I can drop her at the visitor center before I make boat with the others. Ellie says to Grant, I'll catch up with you. You can go with the others. Are you sure? I'll just finish it. Yeah, I want to finish. There's a lightning flash now, with a tooth-rattling thunderclap right on its heels. Grant turns and follows the others, Lex right in his tracks. Ellie and Harding go back to the Triceratops, which is starting to come back to life. As Grant reaches the Explorer, he turns back for one last look at Ellie. He raises his hand to wave, but she has turned the other way. Feeling silly, he drops his hand and goes into the woods. Just as he does, Ellie turns and waves to him, but with his back turned, he misses it too. In this way, they say goodbye. As the reflections of the group approach, the first raindrops fall on the windshields of the tour vehicles. They are big, fat drops, and they kick up little clouds of dust as they smack into the glass. It's going to be a hell of a storm. It's near dark now. The wind has whipped up, and the trees are swaying. Hammond is with Ray Arnold, staring at the video screens. I found a way to reroute through the program. I'm turning around the cars at the rest area loop. Rotten luck this storm. Get my grandchildren on the radio, will you? I don't want them to worry about the wee bit of rain. Arnold reaches for the hand microphone. Dennis Nedry, sweat forming on his upper lip now, is staring at his video monitor. The supply boat is still docked on the island shore, but is now being buffeted by heavy waves. Nedry whispers sharply into the phone, arguing with the mate of the ship again, who can see on the video monitor. There's nothing I can do. If the captain says we gotta go, we gotta go. No, listen to me. You've gotta give me this time. I did a test run on this thing and it took me 20 minutes. I thought I could do it in 15. You've gotta give me 15 minutes. No promises, no promises. I'll be there in 10. Arnold snaps a button on his console. Visitor vehicles are on their way back to the garage. So much for our first tour. 2 no-shows and 1 sick Triceratops. It could have been worse, John. Could have been a lot worse. Dennis Nedry stands up. He's shaking in his shoes, but trying like hell to be casual. Anybody want a Coke? Anybody want something from the machines or soda or something? I thought I'd get something sweet. Hammond and Arnold shake their heads. Nedry starts to leave, then turns back with an afterthought that is so rehearsed it's almost obvious. Oh, I finished debugging the phones, but the system's compiling for 18 minutes or 20, so some minor systems may go on and off for a while. There's nothing to worry about. Simple thing. Okay, that's enough. Nedry turns, stretches one finger out to his screen, and selects an option. Execute. At the same time, he presses the start button on his digital stopwatch he holds in his hand. A digital clock on the computer screen starts to tick down from 60 seconds, and a musical clock starts to sound too, something like the Jeopardy theme. He starts to leave, but returns when he remembers the shaving cream can. He grabs it and leaves. Night has completely fallen now, and the rain has started. It's a tropical storm. The rain falling in drenching sheets on the roof and hoods of the Explorers, which are making their way slowly back to the visitors' center. In the rear car, Grant and Malcolm are alone. Grant is staring out the window, lost in his thoughts. You got any kids? Me? Oh, hell yes. 3. I love them. I love kids. Anything at all can and does happen. He takes a flask from his jacket pocket and unscrews the top. His expression darkens. Same with wives, for that matter. You married? Occasionally. I'm always on the lookout for a future ex-Mrs. Malcolm. Dennis Nedry waits outside the silver door marked embryonic cold storage, staring at the digital stopwatch in his hand. 2, 1. On cue, the security lock panel goes dark and the door clunks ajar. In the cooler, Nedry hurries in and flips open the hatch on the bottom of the shaving cream can, revealing slotted compartments inside. He goes to the rack of dozens of thin glass slides. A sign says, "Viable embryos. Handle with extreme care." He takes the slides out of the rack one by one. They're labeled Stegosaurus, Apatosaurus, Tyrannosaurus rex, and puts them into the can. Arnold is staring at his terminal, puzzled. On the screen, glowing red and blue lines are blinking off in succession. What? Hammond comes up behind him, as does Robert Muldoon. What? The door security systems are shutting down. Well, Nedry said a few systems would go offline, didn't he? Grant and Malcolm still wait in their car. They didn't notice, but the video screen in the middle of their front console suddenly goes black. Malcolm continues their conversation. By the way, Dr. Sattler, she's not, available, is she? Why? Why? I'm sorry, are you two, I wish you the best of luck. The cars jerk to a stop. The lights in the vehicles along the road go out, plunging them into blackness. Grant jerks his hands away from the steering column, immediately assuming it's his fault. What did I touch? You haven't touched or didn't touch anything. We're stopping. I must have touched something. This happens all the time. It must be my fault. Machines hate me. Machines hate you? Yeah, they hate me. You want to talk about this? No. Nedry's Jeep splashes up to the giant gates that lead into Jurassic Park. Nedry jumps out and hurries to the control panel on the side of the cement supports. He flicks a switch, and gates click unlocked. He jumps back into the car and noses into the gates, shoving them open far enough to drive through. He roars into the park grounds. Ray Arnold stares at his terminal aghast as rows upon rows of colored lights crawl off his screen. Whoa, what the hell? What now? Fences are falling all over the park, a few minor systems, he said. Find Nedry. Check the vending machines. The monitors are failing. Muldoon heads for the door just as all the video monitors in the control room go out with a faint electronic zip. The three of them freeze for a moment looking at each other. The tension in the room goes up a notch. Hammond says to Arnold, Use Nedry's terminal. Get it all back on. He can debug later. Arnold pushes off on the floor and whizzes over to Nedry's master terminal in his chair. With one stroke of his arm, he brushes off all the loose junk off Nedry's station. Junk food, soda cans, torn out magazine papers, and tries to work. God, look at this workstation. The Jeopardy-type music is playing a little faster now. Muldoon steps forward, growing alarmed. The raptor fences aren't out, are they? No, they're still on. Why the hell would he turn the others off? A wire mesh fence in front of us has a very clear sign. Danger, electrified fence. This door cannot be opened when fence is armed. A hand reaches out, grabs the fence by the bare wire, flips a latch, and shoves the door open. No sparks fly. Dennis Nedry runs from the fence back to his Jeep, drops it in gear, and tears off down the park road. The rain is absolutely flowing down now. The road is rapidly turning to mud. In the Jeep, Ned can barely see through the windshield. He's driving as fast as possible, checking his watch every few seconds. He leans forward, squinting to see through the windshield, wiping off the condensation with his free hand. A fork in the road rushes into view. He jumps on the brake, but too late. The Jeep careens into a signpost. Shit. He throws the door open and hurries to the fallen sign. To the docks. He props it up. The directional arrow swings hopelessly on a nail. He clenches his jaws and growls. Soaked, Nedry stomps back into his car. Although he doesn't look too convinced, he drops the car in gear and speeds off to the left. Hammond still hovers over Arnold's shoulder while he works at Nedry's terminal. Arnold mutters to himself as he tries another command. Access main program grid. He punches a button, but a buzzer sounds and a little cartoon image of Nedry appears on the screen and waves its little finger disapprovingly. You didn't say the magic word. Arnold is livid. Please, goddammit, I hate this hacker crap. He smacks the top of the monitor, furious. The game show music plays still faster. Call Nedry's people in Cambridge. Arnold whisks across the floor in his chair and snatches up the nearest phone. He punches for an outside line. Phones are out too. Where do the vehicles stop? Bah! The goat that was brought up from the underground earlier is still tethered in the same place, bleeding in the pouring rain. The two explorers sit still in the middle of the road. A man's form races back from the front car to the rear car. In the rear car, Grant, soaking wet, gets into the car and closes the door behind him. Malcolm turns to him. Their radio's out too. Gennaro says to stay put. The kids okay? Well, I didn't ask. Why wouldn't they be? Kids get scared. What's there to be scared about? It's just a little hiccup in the power. I didn't say I was scared. I didn't say you were scared. I know. Fine. Malcolm turns and looks out at the driving rain, the fence that stands between them and the tyrannosaur paddock. He is scared. In the front car, Renato, Lex, and Tim wait, bored. The rain drums on the roof monotonously. Tim is upside down in the front seat. Lex pushes his legs up and he swings them down. Up and down, up and down. I can't believe we invited Ian Malcolm. People get bloody noses, things on your head called aneurysms. A little dreamily, Lex says, I think Dr. Grant is really smart. He is going to write a bunch of papers, go on Larry King Live, say we are irresponsible. Tim climbs into the back seat. Lex hits him with her hat as he moves by her. Don't scare me. Tim finds something under the seat and sits up abruptly, holding what looks like a heavy-duty pair of safety goggles. Hey, where did you find those? In a box under my seat. Are they heavy? Yeah. Then they're expensive. Put them back. He leans back and closes his eyes. Tim ignores him and puts on the goggles. Tim stares out the back window of the Explorer with Grant and Malcolm in it behind them. The image is bright fluorescent green. Oh, cool! Night vision! As Tim watches, the door of the rear Explorer opens and a hand reaches out, holding an empty canteen out to catch some rainwater. Grant pulls the canteen back in, closes the door, and takes a drink. He and Malcolm wait. In the front car, Tim continues to stare out the back window with the goggles. He swings his legs, but suddenly stops. He feels something. He pulls off the goggles and turns back. He moves into the back seat with Lex, who is tapping her hat, and reaches forward to still her hand. Boom. 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 Did you feel that? She doesn't answer. Tim leans over the front passenger seat and looks at the two plastic cups of water that sit in the recessed holes of the dashboard. As he watches, the water in the glasses vibrates, making concentric circles, and then it stops, and then it vibrates again, rhythmically, like from footsteps. Boom, boom, boom. Renato, not entirely convinced. What is that? Maybe it's the power trying to come back on. Tim jumps back into the seat and puts the goggles on again. What is that? What is what? Tim turns and looks out of the side window. He can see the area where the goat is tethered, or was tethered. The chain is still there, but the goat is gone. Bang! They all jump, and Lex screams as something hits the plexiglass sunroof of the Explorer hard. They look up. It's a bloody, disembodied goat leg. Oh, Jesus, Jesus! Tim whips the goggles off and presses forward against the window. He looks up, then cranes his head back further to look out the sunroof. Past the goat's leg, he can see a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It stands maybe 25 feet high, 40 feet long from nose to tail, with an enormous box-like head that must be 5 feet long by itself. The remains of the goat hang out of the Rex's mouth. It tilts his head back and swallows the animal in one big gulp. Genaro can't even speak. His hand claws for the door handle. He shoulders it open and takes off out of the car. Lex, freaking out, "He left us! He left us alone! Dr. Grant! He left us! He left us!" Genaro runs away as fast as he can right past the second car, towards a cement block outhouse 20 or 30 yards away. He reaches it, ducks inside, and pulls the door after him. But there's no latch, just a round hole in the unfinished door. Genaro backs into a stall frantic. The whole bathroom begins to shake. In the rear car, Grant and Malcolm turn in the direction Genaro went. "Where does he think he's going?" "When you gotta go, you gotta go." Malcolm looks the other way out the passenger window. As he watches, the fence begins to buckle, its posts collapsing into themselves, the wires snapping free. What was that all about? Grant now turns and watches ahead of them. The danger sign smacks down on the hood of the first Explorer. The entire fence is coming down, the posts collapsing, the cables snapping as the T-Rex chews its way through the barrier. They watch in horror as the T-Rex steps over the ruined barrier and into the middle of the park road. It just stands there for a moment, swinging its head from one vehicle to the other. In the front car, the Rex strides around to the side of the car and peers down from high above. Tim leaps into the front seat and pulls the driver door shut. Both kids are terrified, breathing hard, unable to speak. "Please, please!" "Boy, do I hate being right all the time. Look at that!" The T-Rex turns and strides quickly back towards them. It circles slowly, bending over to look in at them through the window. Grant and Malcolm sit trembling in the front seat, watching as the giant legs stride past their windows. Grant in a quivery whisper, "Keep absolutely still. Its vision is based on movement." "You're sure?" "Relatively." Malcolm freezes as the Rex bends down and peers right in through his window. The dinosaur's giant, yellowing eye is only slightly smaller than the entire pane of glass. The T-Rex pulls away slightly, then reaches down and bumps the car with its snout, rocking it. Lex is roaming around in the back cargo area looking for something, anything. She finds a flashlight. On the road, the front car lights up from within as Lex switches on the flashlight. The dinosaur raises its head. It turns slowly from the second car to the first car, drawn by the light. Making a decision, it strides over to the first vehicle, fast. In the front car, Tim and Lex can only stare out of the windows as the T-Rex reaches their car and starts to circle it. The Rex bends down and looks in through the front windshield, then the side window. Tim is eye to eye with the thing for a second. Then the dinosaur raises its head above the car. I'm sorry. Turn it off, Lex, turn it off." Tim climbs over the seat and joins Lex. "Where's the button then?" I don't know, I'm sorry." "Why did you do this?" "I don't know, I'm sorry." The kids look up through the sunroof as the head goes higher and higher and higher, and then the Rex turns, looks straight down at them through the sunroof, opens its mouth wide, and roars. The windows rattle. Lex screams. The flashlight goes on again, and the Tyrannosaur strikes. Smash! The thing's head hits the plastic sunroof, knocking the whole frame right out of the roof of the car down into the vehicle. The bubble falls down into Tim and Lex, trapping them, and the animal lunges down through the hole, snapping at them. The plexiglass holds and protects Tim and Lex even as it pins them to the seats. The T-Rex continues to push down, and the glass groans. Cracking lines race across it. Tim, whose feet were caught above him, pushes back, only an inch of glass between him and the dinosaur's teeth. Grant and Malcolm watch in horror as the dinosaur claws at the side of the vehicle with one of its powerful thigh legs. It pushes, starting to tip the car over. "Oh my God. We gotta do something." "What? What can we do?" "There's gotta be something." Grant looks around, climbs over the seat. He tears apart the back area, searching, and finally finds a metal case. He opens it, finding flares. He grabs one and moves quickly back to the driver's seat and opens the door. Malcolm grabs a flare too. The glass windows shatter, and the kids are thrown to the side. The Explorer tilts. The Rex bends down and nudges the car with its head, rolling it up to its side. Tim and Lex tumble around. The T-Rex starts to nudge the Explorer toward the barrier. Over the barrier, there is a gentle terraced area at one side where the Rex emerged from, but the car isn't next to that. It's next to a sharp precipice, representing a 50 or 60-foot drop. The car, upside down now, is pushed near the edge. The Rex towers over the car. Like a dog, it puts one foot on the chassis and tears at the undercarriage with its jaws. Biting at anything it can get a hold of, it rips the rear axle free, tossing it aside, and bites into a tire. The tire explodes, startling the animal. Tim and Lex are trapped inside the rapidly flattening car. As the frame continues to buckle, they crawl toward the open rear window, car collapsing behind them. Mud and rainwater pour into what little space there is left. Tim is ahead, nearing the back window, when there is a crunch, and a seat comes down, pinning him. The dinosaur backs up, dragging the Explorer, swinging it left and right. It seems ready to fling it over the edge. Grant gets out of his car. He's holding the flare in one hand, which he pulls the top off of. Bright flames shoot out the end of it. "Hey! Hey! Over here!" The T-Rex turns and looks at him. Grant waves the flare slowly in front of him from side to side. The T-Rex follows his moving arm, eyes locked on the flare. Grant looks over to the wall and tosses the flare over the edge of the barrier. The Rex lunges after it. Unclear with Grant's plan, Malcolm leaps out of the car and tries to scare up the T-Rex's attention with his own newly lit flare. He begins to wave it at the animal. Grant sees him. "Ian! Freeze! Freeze! Get rid of the flare! Get the kids!" Malcolm inches back slowly, then takes off, running for his life down the road. He runs to the cement block outhouse Genaro went into earlier. The T-Rex sees the movement. It whirls and takes off after Malcolm, fast. Malcolm runs as fast as he can, approaching the outside just steps ahead of the T-Rex. But not far enough ahead. Without even slowing down, the Rex leans forward and flicks Malcolm into the air with its snout. It's just a nudge for the Rex, but it sends Malcolm sailing right through a wooden portion of the wall and into the building. Genaro, who cowers in a corner, screams as the head of the T-Rex explodes through the front of the building, sending chunks of cement flying in all directions inside. The roof collapses. Genaro tries to protect himself from the falling junk. Grant gets on his feet and watches as the T-Rex noses around in the rubble. It seems to find something. It lunges, and Grant can hear Genaro screaming, the sound piercing, until it abruptly stops. Grant scrambles over to the car. "Tim! Lex! Dr. Grant! Dr. Grant!" He lays on the ground, looking inside, and sees Lex staring up at him, conscious, her face covered in mud. "Are you okay? Can you move?" Calling into the car. "Tim, are you okay? Are you okay? I'm stuck. The seat's got my feet." "Tim, I'll come back for you. I'll get Lex out first." Grant reaches in and drags her out. "Are you okay? Good girl." Grant tries to find Tim. "Tim! Tim!" Lex, staring over his shoulder, screams. Grant whirls, covering her mouth at the same time. "Shh! Don't move. It can't see us if we don't move." Lex looks at him like he's crazy, but freezes. They wait. Boom! A big T-Rex footprint smacks down in front of them as the dinosaur approaches the car again. It leans down, right past them, and sniffs the car. Ragged bits of flesh and clothing hanging from its teeth. Not finding anything, the dinosaur swings its head again, snorting loudly through its nose. Grant's hat flies off his head. Still, he doesn't move. The Rex walks to the back of the car. It bends down. Whap! The car spins as it is pushed from behind by the Rex. Grant and Lex are pushed in front of it, helpless. They scramble around on their knees, trying to keep ahead of the car, which the Rex is now pushing even closer to the edge of the barrier. Grant and Lex crawl quickly, but the car is moving faster, catching up on them. Inside the car, Tim screams. He tries to untangle himself. The T-Rex looms over Lex and Grant, who are trapped between the car and the 60-foot drop. The Rex bends down and sees Tim. Tim backs away furiously, but there's almost no room to move in there. The Rex opens its mouth wide and stretches its tongue into the car. Tim screams and kicks as the tongue tries to wrap around him, but it fails and withdraws from the car. The T-Rex still tries to get Grant and Lex, pushing the car, spinning on its roof. Grant and Lex scramble, trying to avoid being caught by the T-Rex and crushed by the car. "This way!" The back of the car almost crushes them against the barrier. "Get back!" They move as the Rex continues to push the car toward the edge. Grant finally gets on the wall and Lex follows. The T-Rex roars in frustration. It bends down for one final lunge at the car. But Grant sees it coming. He grabs one of the dangling fence cables on the other side of the barrier. "Grab hold of me!" She wraps her arm around his neck. He scrambles to the edge of the barrier and starts to climb down. "Timmy! Timmy!" The cable is slick with rain, and it's all Grant can do to hang on as he and Lex slide rapidly down. Above them, the vehicle is now teetering over the edge, threatening to drop right on top of them if they don't hurry. Grant gasps as Lex has unwittingly started to choke him as he holds on for dear life. "You're choking me!" The car groans, nearly over the ledge now. Grant looks to the side. There are other cables, out of the line of the car's impending drop. His feet scrambling along the concrete wall, Grant tries to swing over towards one. "Grab a wire!" But he falls short. His momentum carries them back the other way, but on the second swing, Lex manages to grab hold of the second cable. "I got it!" The car falls. Lex and Grant are clear by inches, clinging to the second cable. "Timmy!" The car crunches into a leafy top of a tree, resting on its roof some 15 feet below them. The T-Rex stares down at them, but they are safely out of its reach. It roars once more, in a final fit of frustration, turns. John Hammond is livid. "I will kill Nedry, I will kill him!" Muldoon bursts through the door. "Well?" "There's no sign of him anywhere." The game show music is louder and faster now, very annoying. "Ray, will you please switch off that music?" Ray Arnold's cigarette is practically burning his lips down to almost nothing in his mouth. He hovers over Nedry's computer terminal, which is a mass of incomprehensible commands that scroll by quickly as he futilely examines each one of them. Muldoon paces. Ellie stares at Arnold in amazement. "Are we getting anywhere with these procedures of yours? I mean, what's hanging us up?" "I ran a key check on every stroke Nedry entered today. It's all pretty standard stuff until this one." Ellie stands and joins the group at the computer. "What one?" He points to his computer screen, to a specific series of commands. The others crowd over his shoulder and stare at the screen. "Keycheck /space -o keycheck off safety -o." He's turning the safety systems off. He doesn't want anybody to see what he's about to do. Now look at this next entry. It's the kicker. wht.rbt.obj. Whatever it did it all. But with the keycheck off, the computer didn't file the keystrokes. Only way to find them now is to search the computer's line of code one by one. How many lines of code are there? About 2 million. 2 million, great. That would help. "Robert, I wonder perhaps if you would be kind enough to take a gas jeep and bring back my grandchildren." "Sure." "I'll go with him." They head for the door. Hammond turns, staring out the windows at the front of the control room. He's gone pale, and he's sweating, wrapped up in a million thoughts. Behind him, Ray Arnold's voice calls to him, but he doesn't hear it. "John! John!" Hammond leans on his cane, and for the first time, He looks like he's actually using it. "John!" Hammond turns, finally hearing him. "I can't get Jurassic Park back online without Dennis Nedry." As the rain continues to pour down, a gas-powered Jeep roars down another park road. Dennis Nedry drives the Jeep as fast as he can in the treacherous conditions. He mutters to himself, shaking his head. "Should have been there by now, should have been there." He hauls it around a corner and looks down, checking his watch. When he looks back up, his eyes go wide. There's a white wood guardrail fence right in front of him. He stands on the brakes as hard as he can. The Jeep fishtails, skidding out of control in the mud towards the fence. Nedry hauls the wheel hard to the side, trying to control the skid, but the Jeep skids off the road, going halfway over the muddied embankment. God damn it! He drops the car in reverse and hits the gas. The wheel spins, sending mud flying everywhere, but the Jeep goes nowhere, just digs in further. Nedry can't believe it. Frustrated, he gets out of the Jeep. He suddenly stops. He can see another park road down the sloping embankment about 20 feet below. There's a large sign alongside the road. Nedry leans forward excitedly to get a better look. It reads, "To East Dock." He scrambles to the front of the Jeep. Nedry cranks a winch its coil on the front end of the Jeep. Nedry cranks a winch that's coiled on the front end of the Jeep. "No problem. Winch this sucker off the thing, tie it to a thing, pull it down the thing, and pull it back up." He loses his balance and slips, falling back on his rear. He slides down the muddy embankment across the road below. Pissed, he gets to his knees and searches for his glasses. "Oh, where are my glasses? I can't afford new ones." He stands and grabs the winch and goes to a sturdy-looking tree on the other side. "You can make it." From the distance, there is a soft hooting sound. There's some movement in the bushes. Nedry looks around for the source of the sound and movement. He doesn't find it. He nervously checks his watch and goes back to the winch, but faster. "No problem. Pop this thing right down." The hooting comes again, and Nedry turns. Again, nothing. A figure ducks around the tree and pops out on the other side, hooting playfully. Nedry looks around one side of the tree. Nothing. It pops up on the other side, hooting again. Nedry looks again. Nothing. It seems like a friendly game of hide and seek, but Nedry begins to get rattled. "That's nice. I gotta go. I'm getting out of here. Come on, you can make it." He secures the winch and starts across the road, back up the embankment. He freezes and feels something behind him. He turns around slowly and sees a Dilophosaur. It stands only about 4 feet high. It's spotted like an owl, has a brilliantly covered crest that flanks its head. It doesn't look very dangerous. In fact, it's kind of cute. "Oh, nice boy, nice boy. Okay, run along. I don't have anything for you. Go on, go home. Dinner time. Are you hungry? They'll feed you. Go, boy, girl, whatever." The Dilophosaur still stares at Nedry, tilting its head curiously. Nedry looks around on the ground and finds a stick. He picks it up and chucks it at the thing. He throws it as far as he can. "Nice, juicy steak. Fetch." The Dilophosaur gets into the spirit of the game, but not the object. "Lame brain, what's the matter with you?" He shakes his head and starts back towards the Jeep, muttering to himself. "Stupid walnut brain extinct kangaroo. I hope I run you over on the way down." He's near the top when the Dilophosaur suddenly hops right out in front of him, startling him. Nedry loses his balance and falls back, right on his rear. He gets to his feet, angry. "I said—" He picks up a stick and chucks it at the thing. "Beat it!" What are you doing?" The animal hisses. The brilliantly colored fan around its neck flares wildly. 2 bulbous sacs on either side of its neck inflate. It rears its head back again and spits. Splat! A big gob of something wet smacks into the middle of Nedry's chest. He reaches down and touches the goo that's dribbling down his slicker. "That's disgusting!" Splat! Another gob of goo smacks into the headlight, right next to Nedry's head. He stands up. A look of confusion crosses his face. He lifts his right hand, the one that he touched the spit with, and looks at it strangely, flexing it. Pow! This time, the loogie hits Nedry right smack in the face. He screams and rubs it away frantically. because it hurts like hell. Nedry falls back, clawing at his eyes in excruciating pain. He pulls his hands away, starting to hyperventilate. He flails his hands out in front of him, blinking a mile a minute, but blinded. He staggers forward, but trying to get to the Jeep. He gets the door open, but smacks his head on the door frame and collapses. The shaving cream flies out of Nedry's jacket pocket. It tumbles into runoff water, down the muddy hillside. Nedry gets to his feet again and staggers in the general direction of the Jeep. He reaches the open door and feels his way in. He slams the door. There's another hoot, from inside the Jeep. Nedry turns and screams. The Dilophosaur is right there, in the passenger seat. It hisses louder than before. It opens its fans angrily, vibrating, reaching a crescendo. And the thing pounces, slamming Nedry back against the driver's window, shattering it, as Nedry shrieks. Rain and mud wash over the shaving cream can, burying it. The rain has all stopped now. Grant and Lex are at the bottom of the large barrier leading up to the park road. Like it or not, they're in the park now, and are surrounded by thick jungle foliage on all sides. They're both beaten up, and Grant's face is covered in blood. He's bent over a big puddle, splashing water on his face, rinsing the blood off, and trying to bring himself to. Poor Lex is scared as hell. She stands behind Grant, ramrod straight, her breath coming short, desperate gasps. Her eyes are wide. She doesn't look like she can move. As Grant gets rid of the blood, his injury doesn't look so bad, just a gash on his forehead. He turns and looks up to the tree the explorer fell in. It's stuck there, nose down, in the thickest top branches. Lex's gasps are getting louder. She's terrified. Hey, come on, don't. Just stop. He touches her, but it's awfully awkward. More of a pat on the head than anything strong or reassuring. But she responds to the contract, hurling herself forward, throwing her arms tightly around his waist. She clamps here, holding on for dear life, sobbing. Lex, you gotta be quiet, please, stop it. Shh. This seems to quiet her. Because if we make too much noise, he's gonna hear us and come back. Lex bursts out crying again, a wailing scream, nearly hysterical now. Grant holds her, no idea what to do. He turns and looks around. Timmy! Timmy! He hears a cracking sound. He looks up to the tree again. The explorer has fallen a few feet lower into the branches. Grant looks down at Lex, who is sitting on a rock. Dad? Dad? Shh! I'm right here, Lex. I'm gonna look out for you. I'm gonna go help your brother. I want you to stay here and wait for me, okay? He left us. He left us. That's not what I'm going to do. Good? Grant walks to the tree. Lex scampers into the culvert. Grant takes a deep breath, grabs hold of the first branch, and starts his long climb. Fortunately, it's a good climbing tree. Its branches are thick and regularly spaced. Grant moves at a good pace. He reaches the car's level, on the driver's side, 5 or 6 feet to one side of it. The car is in rough shape. It's much thinner than it used to be, its nose completely smashed in. The front wheels driven solidly into a thick branch. They are what hold it in place. Tim! Tim! Grant comes up to the car and looks in. Tim is huddled on the floor on the passenger side, frightened, hugging his knees to his chest. He looks up at Grant with a tear and blood-streaked face. His voice is barely audible. I threw up. That's okay. Listen, give me your hand. Tim doesn't move. I won't tell anybody you threw up. Just give me your hand, okay? He reaches out. Tim reaches too, but they're still about a foot apart. Grant grabs hold of the steering wheel to pull himself further. The wheel turns. On the branch, the front wheel turns, losing a bit of their grip on the thick branch they're resting on. Tim and Grant grab hands. Grant holds on to him, getting an arm securely around his waist. They climb down. They stop on a branch. Okay, that's not so bad, Tim? Yes, it is. It's like coming out of a treehouse. Did your dad ever build you a treehouse, Tim, eh? No. Me too. He starts to move down. Okay, the main thing about climbing is never, ever look down. Never. This is impossible. I can't make it. This is like 50 feet. So am I going to help you with your foot? What if the car falls? The car groans forward on the branch, which sags in their direction. They look up. The car begins to shift dramatically towards them. Oh no! Go, Tim, go! They climb down as fast as they can, as the big branch that is supporting the car creaks, ready to give way any second. Faster! Faster! The branch breaks, disintegrates really, and the car falls straight at them. Grant and Tim let go of the branch they're on and fall, thudding into another branch a few feet down. The car smacks into the big branch they just vacated and stops there. Grant and Tim are half climbing, half falling down the tree now, slipping on the resin-covered branches, just trying like hell to get out of the way. The second branch breaks, and now the car smashes and crashes through a network of thinner branches, headed right for them. It hits open space and goes into freefall. Grant turns and puts up his arms in defense, and the car stops, slamming into a thick branch just above him. Grant looks up, eyeball to eyeball with the front grille. The new branch starts to creak. Grant and Tim basically fall down the rest of the tree, the car bashing its way through right behind them. They jump the last 6 or 7 feet and hit the ground hard. Grant grabs Tim and rolls with him to the side, just as the car smashes into the earth, nose first, standing upright that way. They look up in relief, but the damn thing's still heading for them, now tipping over, falling straight at them, and there's no way they have time to get out of the way this time, so Grant just balls himself on top of Tim to try to protect him, and crash! The Jeep falls right on top of them. Grant, amazingly unhurt, looks up confused. They're inside the Jeep again, saved by the whole sunroof. Lex is still in the culvert, terrified, slowly banging her head against the wall. Grant is at the mouth of the culvert, carefully studying the rinky-dinky map of the park he picked up during the slideshow. Okay. He's trying to get his bearings from the crude cartoon-like drawing on the map, but it's tough. He looks up, picking a direction, and shoves the map in his pocket decisively. He looks back at Lex. Lex, we're gonna have to get out of here. He walks towards her. Hiding isn't a rational solution. We have to improve our situation. She doesn't move. Grant looks at Tim. Tim's out here. Grant picks Tim up. He's okay. Still nothing. Grant tries a new tact. He walks away. Of course, you could just wait here while we go back and get help. That's a good idea. You'll probably be safe long enough on your own. I doubt it. Maybe. It's hard to say. Liar! You said you wouldn't leave. I'm trying to use psychology to get you out of the drain, you know? She just stares at him like he's nuts. Tim shakes his head at Grant as if to say, nice try. Grant calms his tone. We can't go back the way we came. What we have here is a free-range T-Rex on the road. There's fences on either side. If we meet him between here and the lodge, we'd have problems. But what this means is that the whole paddock is empty. It's safe. It's safe? It's safe. It's safe. And that's the way we're going to go. What do you say? All right. He has spoken calmly and confidently, so Lex crawls out of the culvert and stands next to him. Good girl. He kisses her hand and helps her crawl out of the culvert. Tim and Lex nod, and he starts off in the direction he indicated. They trail behind him. Might be kind of slow, but can't be more than 3 or 4 miles. I'd hope the wreck's finished by feeding now, but let's not kid ourselves. Did you know a carnivore can eat up to 25% of its own body weight in about one sitting? So he's just ready to move on to the main course by now. He stops in the middle of the sentence, noticing he's alone. He turns around. Both of the kids have scampered all the way back into the culvert, terrified. Muldoon and Ellie race down the park road in an open-topped Jeep, like the one Nedry took earlier. Neither of them speak. They just stare ahead grimly, wondering what they're about to find. There they are. They round the corner and come to the top of a hill, where the attack took place. The jeep skids to a stop and they jump out. The road is rutted, muddy mess. The cement block house is a pile of rubble. One of the explorers is gone. The other stands untouched, both doors hanging open. Oh God, where's the other car? She runs to the explorer. Muldoon follows, looking around. Ellie leans in and looks around. Nobody's there. She and Muldoon walk towards the wreckage of the outhouse, calling, I think it's ahead of us. It could be anywhere. With the fences out, it can go in and out of any paddock it likes. They hear a moaning sound from somewhere in the wreckage of the restroom building. They rush over to it. Ian Malcolm lies on his back, semi-conscious among the twisted wood and cement. It's Malcolm! He shines his light along the length of Malcolm's body. His shirt is soaked with blood, but his right leg is even worse off. The right ankle is bent outward at a straight angle from his leg. The trousers flattened, soaked with blood. Malcolm's belt has been twisted around his thigh. He's put a tourniquet on. Ian! Ian! Malcolm groans as she touches him, groggy. Remind me to talk to John for a lovely weekend. The T-Rex roars again, but closer now. Ellie and Muldoon look at each other. Can we chance moving him? Please, chance it. Muldoon lays Malcolm as carefully as possible in the back of the jeep. Where are the kids? Ellie looks around. Lex! Tim! She turns and looks back at the empty road. She's on the verge of tears, but is fighting them back. Dr. Sattler, I've seen a lot of animal attacks. People just disappear. No blood, no trace. That's the way it happens. No, no, no! She walks to the edge of the road, her eyes following the deep ruts the explorer made when it went over the edge. Muldoon gets ready to leave. Ellie, come on! The other car! Ellie's and Muldoon's flashing beams spray light by the base of the tree. Dr. Grant! Alan! They find the wrecked explorer. Muldoon peers inside, looking for anything. Do you see anything? I don't know. The T-Rex roars again, closer still. Ellie nervously goes to the other side of the car and looks in. Alan! They're not here. Ellie desperately searches the grounds for any signs of Grant. She finds their footprints. Thank God. Malcolm, laid out in the back of the jeep, feels something strange. He looks down at one of the T-Rex footprints in the road. It's filled with water. The water in the puddle vibrates rhythmically. Malcolm's eyes widen. He looks around frantically. Anybody? Anybody hear that? Ellie is still looking around to Muldoon's chagrin. Her flashlight falls on 3 sets of footprints in the mud. Look! With her flashlight, she follows the trail the footprints made. They lead into the jungle and disappear. Malcolm is staring, wide-eyed, at the rings in the water, which are getting bigger now. It's, an impact tremor, which is, what it is, boom! Boom! I'm fairly alarmed here. Ellie and Malcolm come up over the embankment, excited. Gotta move. Gotta get out of here. Let's go. We gotta go. We gotta go. Gotta get out of here. Go, go. Let's hurry. Let's get out of here. They stop talking. The booming is louder now and faster. Much faster. They look back over their shoulders. Oh. Ellie and Muldoon get into the jeep. Muldoon is in the driver's seat. Move now. Let's go. Let's go. Right now. Right now. The Tyrannosaurus smashes out of the jungle foliage, bursts onto the road, and runs straight at them, moving at least 30 miles an hour. Go, go, go! Muldoon fumbles for the keys, turns the jeep over, and slams it into gear. He drops the clutch, hits the gas, and tears ass out of there. But the jeep is slow to work through the first few gears. Terrified, Ellie dares to look down to the side view mirror, which tells her objects are closer than they appear. And they sure are. The T-Rex is still gaining on the slowly accelerating jeep. All 3 of them stare back at the Rex in horror. Faster! Faster! Must go faster! It's getting closer! Must go faster! Faster! Shit! Shit! Faster! Must go faster. Go, open it up, fifth gear, here it comes. Stand on it, fifth, stand on it, let's go. Which means they don't see the half-fallen tree branch right in front of them blocking the path of the road. Muldoon, who looks back first, shouts, "Down!" They all duck. The windshield hits the branch and shatters as the Jeep flies ahead, really picking up speed now. The T-Rex just runs right through the branch, smashing it entirely. They're bounced around pretty badly. Malcolm is knocked into the front, and in so doing, knocks the gear shift into neutral. The engine races, and the T-Rex closes in again. Losing ground now, the dinosaur makes a final lunge for the Jeep and crunches into the rear left quarter panel. Faster, faster! But Muldoon slams it back into gear and guns it. The T-Rex gives up, fading into the distance. They drive in silence for a few moments, all scared out of their wits. Think they'll have that on the tour? Grant, Lex, and Tim make their way through Jurassic Park. Far in the distance, there's another roar. Grant hears it, but tries not to show it. Hear that? Are you hearing this? No, I didn't hear anything. They keep walking, but now Grant is looking around for a safe place to hide. He looks up to the towering trees around them. You guys both look pretty tired. I think we ought to find some place to rest. He hears another roar. Like, about now. Come on, hurry up, like this tree. Why are we hurrying if there's nothing wrong? What if we fall? I hate trees. Lex, Tim, and Grant climb. Grant is behind, watching the other two, giving them a push-up when they need it. I hate trees. They don't bother me. Yeah, you weren't in the last one. Now near the top of the tree, the three of them sit there dangling their legs looking out over the park. It's an incredible view. They can see in all directions. With the full moon, there's a lot of detail. Most striking of all are dozens of sauropod heads at the end of long necks that tower over the park. Hey, those are brontosaurus. Those are brachiosauruses. It's okay to call them brontosaurus, Tim. It's a great name. It's a romantic name. It means thunder lizard. Thunder lizard! Grant finds a solid web of branches and settles himself in it. Leaning back against the trunk of the tree with a little room on either side of him, Lex nestles up next to him in the branch. Grant is surprised, but accepts it. Tim climbs off to the side, to a nook in the branch of his own. Silent for a moment, the three can hear the hoots of the animals as they call. Some are almost musical. Listen to that! They're singing! He moves over to a higher branch. Of course, no one's ever heard that from a dinosaur, but I swear that sounds suspiciously like a mating call to me, in an all-female environment. He smiles, enchanted. He hoots himself, trying to imitate one of the calls. Immediately, 5 or 6 heads turn their direction and hoot back. Shh! Stop! Don't let the monsters come over here! They're not monsters, Lex. They're just animals, and these are herbivores. That means they only eat vegetables, but for you, I think they'd make an exception. Tim. Oh, I hate the other kind. That's just what they do. Dorkatops! Straight up brainiac! Could you guys possibly cool that for a... Satisfied, Tim settles in for the night. Grant shifts too. Getting comfortable, but something in his pocket pinches him. He winces and digs it out. It's the velociraptor claw he unearthed so long ago in Montana. Yesterday, actually. He looks at it, thinking a million thoughts, staring at this thing that used to be so priceless. What are you going to do now if you don't have to dig up dinosaur bones? I guess we'll just have to evolve too. What do you call a blind dinosaur? I don't know. What do you call a blind dinosaur? Do you think he saw us? What do you call a blind dinosaur's dog? You got me. Do you think he saw us Rex? Grant laughs. Both kids finally close their eyes, but after a moment, Lex pops her eyes open again. What if the dinosaur comes back while we're asleep? I'll stay awake. All night? All night. Grant lets the claw fall to the ground. Ellie comes into the darkened restaurant, following the source of the flickering light. A candle burns at a table in the corner. John Hammond sits at the table, alone. There is a bucket of ice cream in the middle, and he is eating a dish of it, staring down morosely. Ellie draws up to the table, and Hammond looks up at her. His eyes are puffy, his hair is messed up. For the first time we've seen him, the fire is gone from his eyes. It was all melting. Ellie just nods. Malcolm is okay for now. I gave him a shot of morphine. They'll all be fine. Who better to get the children through Jurassic Park than a dinosaur expert? Ellie nods. Another pause. Hammond breaks in again. You know, the first attraction I ever built when I came down south from Scotland was a flea circus. Petticoat Lane. Really quite wonderful. We had a wee trapeze, a merry-go-round, a roundabout. What do you call it? Carousel. A carousel, and a seesaw. They all moved, motorized, of course. But people would swear they could see fleas. I see the fleas, Mummy. Can't you see the fleas? Clown fleas, high-wire fleas, fleas on parade. He trails off. Ellie just looks at him, not sure what his state is. He goes on. But with this place, I wanted to show them something real, something that wasn't an illusion, something they could see and feel and touch. An aim devoid of merit. But you can't think through this one. You have to feel it. You're absolutely right. Yes, you're right. Hiring Nedry was a mistake. That's obvious. We're over-dependent on automation. I can see that now. But that's all correctable for the next time round. John. You're still building into that flea circus, that illusion. And now you're adding on to it by what you're doing here. That's the illusion. Well, once we have control again... Control? You never had control. I was overwhelmed by the power of this place, so I made a mistake too. I didn't have enough respect for that power, and it's out now. You're sitting here trying to pick up the pieces, John. There's nothing really worth picking up. The only thing that matters now are the people we love. Alex, Lex, and Tim. And John. And they're out there where people are dying. People are dying, you know? There was a long pause. Hammond avoids her gaze. Ellie reaches out and takes a spoon out of one of the buckets of ice cream and licks it. Finally. It's good. He looks up at her. His face is different, as the unhappy irony of what he's about to say finally hits home. Spared no expense. The sun comes up over Jurassic Park. The danger of the night before is overcome by the sheer beauty of the place. It really is like the Serengeti Plain. Over at the edge of the great open field, a huge tree marks the border between the open area and the thick of the jungle. Up in the tree, Grant, Tim, and Lex are asleep in the branches of the tree, both kids now curled up under Grant's arms. A heavy shadow falls over all three of them, blocking out the sun entirely. Grant awakens, only a little bit asleep, as a brachiosaur's head pushes into the tree branches right up beside them. It hesitates there for a second, seemingly staring at them. Grant just watches as it opens its mouth very wide and chomps down on a branch over their heads. The kids awaken with a start. Tim points. Lex opens her mouth to scream, but nothing comes out, and then, "Go away!" It's okay, it's a brachiosaur. Vegisaurus, Lex, Vegisaurus! But Lex isn't taking any chances and scrambles back away from its mouth. Tim and Grant come together on the branch, just staring at the dinosaur in wonder as it eats its breakfast. Grant gets another branch. Tim scampers up, trying to get the brachiosaur's attention. Come here, boy. Girl. He tries whistling. Grant moves forward and tries to feed the brachiosaur. The animal gets the end of the branch and starts a tug-of-war with Grant. Tim tries to help him. They really begin to have a good time with the brachiosaur. Honk! The brachiosaur makes a loud honking noise, startling Grant and the kids. Take a bite. I'm not letting go. It's so strong. Look at its nose. He grabs onto the branch. You need help? Tim reaches out, petting the dinosaur's head while it chews. That's a girl. Hey, Lex, you can touch it. It's a girl just like you. Come on, it's okay, Lex. Come on, touch it. It likes you. It's gotta like you. Come on, Lex. Come on, touch it. It's a girl. It has to like you. Lex, why don't you touch it? It has to like you. It's a girl. Come on, try some. Take a bite. It's good protein. Come on, Lex. Why don't you touch it? Look at its nose. This is a 77-ton animal. Come on over, Lex. Just think of it as a big cow. Look at its teeth. He moves in closer. Come here, girl. I like cows. You're a big, beautiful animal. His nose is running. It looks like he has a cold. The dinosaur keeps chewing, not objecting to the inspection. Did you smell that? Lex tentatively edges forward in the tree to the inspection. Come on, girl, up here. She barely touches the thing on the tip of its nose, and it sneezes. It's a vast explosion, and Lex falls back, dripping wet from head to toe. God bless you. Lex, her shirt now soaked and face all wet, walks away from the tree. Tim and Grant follow. Oh, great. Now she'll never try anything new. Lex is embarrassed and ticked off. She'll just sit in her room, never come out, and play on her computer. Lex, as she wipes off some of the wet and throws it at Tim. I'm a hacker. That's what I said, you're a nerd. They don't call you people hackers anymore, they call you people nerds. Tim and Lex continue talking, obviously to Grant, who has stopped by our tree root trunk. Hey, Lex, come here. What? Hey, Lex, you forgot to say Gesundheit. Grant is still touching on the ground below the tree where he landed, staring at something in the palm of his hand. They come over and look at his shoulder, curious. They stare in amazement. It's a whole clutch of dinosaur eggs, all hatched, now empty. Grant picks up one of the fragments, a large one, nearly half an egg. You know what this is? It's a dinosaur egg. The dinosaurs are breeding. My grandpa said all the dinosaurs are girls. Amphibian DNA. What's that? Well, on the tour, the film said they used frog DNA to fill in the gene sequence gaps. They mutated the dinosaur's genetic code and blended it with that of frogs. Now, some West African frogs have been known to spontaneously change sex from male to female in a single-sex environment. Malcolm was right. Look, life found a way. In the control room, the mood is hopeless. Malcolm, his wounds bandaged, but in real pain, hangs around with Ellie and Muldoon, hoping for some development, while Ray Arnold is still at the computer terminal and looking a mess. He doggedly sorts through the computer's system lines of code, one by one. They blip by, reflected in his glasses. He turns and stares up at Hammond with a look of absolute incredulity on his face. No, that's crazy. You're out of his mind. You're absolutely out of your mind. Wait a minute. What exactly does this mean? Hammond turns to her, the twinkle back in his eye. We're talking, my dear, about a calculated risk, which is the only option left to us. We'll never find the command entry used. He covered his tracks far too well, and I think he's obviously not coming back, so shutting down the system is... I will not do it. You'll have to get somebody else. I will not. Shutting down the system is the only way to guarantee wiping out everything he did. If I understand correctly, all the systems will come back on their original startup modes, correct? Theoretically, yes, but we've never shut down the whole system. It may not come back at all. Would we get the phones back? Yeah, in theory, again. What about the lysine contingency? We could put that into effect, says Muldoon. What's that? It's absolutely out of the question. Hammond walks away from the group. The lysine contingency. It's intended to prevent the spread of the animals in case they ever got off the island, but we could use it now. Dr. Wu inserted a gene that makes a single faulty enzyme in protein metabolism. The animals can't manufacture the amino acid lysine unless they're continually supplied with lysine by us. They'll go into a coma and die. How do we cut off the lysine? No trick to it. Just stop running the program. Leave them unattended. Malcolm speaks up. How soon before they become comatose? It will be totally painless. They'll just slip into unconsciousness and they'll die. How long before they slip into unconsciousness? About 7 days, more or less. 7 days? Oh, great. Oh, very clever. Malcolm speaks up. Yeah, that'll be a first. Man and dinosaur all die together. John's plan. He raises a hand.
Hammond finally loses his cool. He bellows, summoning every ounce of authority at his command. That's quite a bit. People are dying! There is a moment in which no one dares to speak. Hammond regains himself. Will you please shut the system down? Arnold swallows and gets to his feet. You asked for it. He walks slowly across the room to a red metal box on the wall. He takes a key from his belt, unlocks the door, and opens it. There is a row of 4 switches inside. He flips them off, one by one, leaving only a single lever left. His hand hovers over it, and he flips the lever. You got it. Every monitor, every terminal, every fluorescent light shuts out, plunging them into near darkness. They just sit in eerie stillness for a moment. How long will this take? About 30 seconds. They wait in tense silence. Hammond adjusts the wilting silk handkerchief in his breast pocket. He notices Malcolm staring up at him, his eyes full of disapproval. I think perhaps I'll just sit down. I don't suppose you think all that much of me now, do you? You're all right, John, you're okay. It's just you don't have intelligence. You have think-telligence. You think narrowly and call it being focused. You don't see all the consequences. You're very good at solving problems, at getting answers, but you just don't know the right questions. Ian. Malcolm looks at her. Yes? Shut up. Yes. It's not a criticism, by the way. Finally, Arnold turns back to the box. He flips the row of safety switches back again, then hesitates by the main switch. Hold on to your butts. He throws it. Nothing happens. There's a very long pause. It's not working. Listen, which one of you knows how to handle a gun? Arnold, who can't quite understand this, races over to the main monitor. Ha! It's okay, see? Look! They stare at the monitor, which glows with a faint amber light, the only mechanical thing in the room that's on. The left-hand corner of the screen displays 2 words. System ready. Arnold looks at them, his face triumphant. It's on! It worked! That'll teach you to trust Grandpa. Wait a minute, what do you mean worked? Everything is still off. The shutdown must have tripped the circuit breakers. All we have to do is turn them back on, reboot a few systems in here, the phones, security doors, half a dozen others, but it worked. System is ready. Where are the breakers? Out in the maintenance shed, other side of the compound. I'll go out there. 3 minutes, I can have the power back on in the entire park. Just be safe. I'd like to have everybody in the emergency bunker until Mr. Arnold returns. The whole system is back on its feet again. Muldoon and Ellie carry a jerry-rigged stretcher with Malcolm on it down a narrow path in the compound. Hammond is with them. Grant, Tim, and Lex walk through the park grounds, heading across a relatively open area. Grant consults the map. I'm tired and I'm hungry. When I get back, I'm going to have peanuts and... The visitor center should be about a half mile beyond that rise if we keep, The animal cry they heard earlier is closer now, louder, and repeated by many more animals. Grant looks up. What is that? Can you tell me what they are? Gallimimus. He turns around to face the direction the sound is coming from. He squints. The animal cries are much louder now, accompanied by a low rumble. Here, they're flocking this way. Grant takes a few steps forward. As he watches, he can make out shapes in the distance. Dinosaurs. Dozens of them. All at once, he figures it out. Stampede! And that's exactly what it is. A stampede of at least 40 dinosaurs. Gallimimus by name. Lex is ready to get out of there, but Grant and Tim hesitate, staring. The dinosaurs kick up a flock of birds, which startles them. They all change direction at once, the same way. Looking at the wheeling, the uniform direction change, like a flock of birds evading a predator. Sure enough, they hear a roar, a very familiar roar, of Tyrannosaurus Rex. Oh, shit. Grant and the kids whirl at the sound, but can't place it, as it seems to come from all around them. They look back towards the stampede. The herd spontaneously changes direction again, and now they're headed straight at them. The 3 of them take off across the meadow towards the relative cover of the jungle. It's a real foot race, but the herd is far faster, and Grant knows they're not going to make it. He jumps over a huge root network. There's a space under it to hide, and Grant stops the kids, shoves them underneath, then follows them. They cover their heads as the herd thunders over the roots. Chunks of everything fly everywhere as the herd plows overhead, their clawed feet striking the roots dangerously close to Grant and the kids. Finally, they pass. Grant peers up over the top root. He looks toward the trees, which the herd is now running alongside. A roar comes from somewhere within the trees. Grant scans the trees looking for any signs of the T-Rex, and then it bursts out, ahead of the herd, cutting them off, throwing them into disarray, scattering them everywhere. They all stare as the Rex kicks it into overdrive, runs down one of the Gallimimus, and sinks its teeth into its neck. The T-Rex makes the kill in a cloud of dust and debris. Tim and Grant half rise up to their feet, staring in wonder. "I want to go now!" But Grant and Tim are transfixed, watching the T-Rex. "Watch how it eats!" "Please!" "Bet you'll never look at birds the same way again." Tim nods in fascination. The T-Rex pauses in the middle of its meal and roars. "Let's go!" "Okay, keep low. Follow me." She turns and runs off, running as fast as they can across the open plain. Tim and Grant tear themselves away and follow her. "Look at all its blood!" Ellie paces impatiently. She comes down the stairs. "Something's happened. Something went wrong." Muldoon paces too. Hammond and Malcolm are also crammed in the underground bunker. Malcolm lays on a table, while Hammond tries to tend to his wounds. Hammond speaks, still feeling the obligation of the host. "This is just a delay, that's all it is. All major theme parks have had delays. When they opened Disneyland in 1956, nothing worked. Nothing." "John." "But John, if the Pirates of the Caribbean breaks down, the pirates don't eat the tourists." Another pause. More pacing. "I can't wait anymore. Something went wrong. I'm gonna go get the power back on." "You can't just stroll down the road, you know." "Bob, let's not be too hasty. He's only been gone." He looks at his watch. Muldoon walks over to a steel cabinet. Ellie joins him. "I'm going with you." "Okay." Muldoon clangs open a steel cabinet, revealing an impressive array of weaponry inside. He removes a shotgun and what looks like a small rocket launcher. He shoves a shell into the barrel of the rocket launcher, which accepts it with a faint electronic sizzle. Hammond searches out the set of blueprints, gets them out of the filing cabinet, and spreads them out on top of Malcolm, almost crushing his leg. "Sorry." Ellie and Muldoon join Hammond. "This isn't like switching on the kitchen light, but I think you can follow this and I'll talk you through it." Hammond signals with a look. "Talk." Ellie gets a couple of walkie-talkies from the shelf and shoves them into her belt. "Okay. But you know, I really should be the one going." "Why?" "Well, because you're, Look. Come on, let's go." "We'll discuss sexism in survival situations when I get back." She backs towards the door. "You just take me through step by step. I'm on channel 2. Grant, Tim, and Lex scrambles through the jungle, completely out of breath, exhausted. They arrive at the base of the big electrical fence that surrounds the main compound. Grant looks up at the fence. It must be over 20 feet high. "It's a bit of a climb. You guys think you can make it?" "Nope. Way too high." Grant grabs a stick and climbs up on the ledge. He looks at the warning light on the fence. It's out. He pokes the wire with a stick, and no sparks fly. "Guess that means the power's off." Still not trusting the fence, he taps it with his foot. He moves in slowly and lays both hands on the cable and closes his fingers around it. Grant's body shakes. He screams. The kids scream. He stops and turns around slowly and smiles wickedly. "That's not funny." "That was great." Far in the distance, the T-Rex roars. Without a second's delay, both kids leap to their feet. Ellie and Muldoon step out of the bunker. The main compound feels different now. It belongs more to the jungle than to civilization. Muldoon has a big gun in his hands. "Okay, I'm on channel 2, Ellie says on the radio. "Stick to my heels." They start down the path, moving quickly. Muldoon and Ellie emerge from one path and come into a slightly more open area. The huge raptor pen stands silently, surrounded and penetrated by jungle, the abandoned goon toward looming over like a haunted house. Muldoon slows down, Ellie right next to him. They notice a hole in the fence that surrounds the raptor pen.
The metal is twisted, as if gnawed. The hole is large enough for an animal to slip through. Oh my God. Oh God. The shutdown must have turned off all defenses. God damn it. Even Nedry knew better than to mess with the raptor fence. He squats down near the hole, looking at the ground. He sees 3 sets of footprints. He follows them with his eyes. They head off in different directions, but in all the jungle foliage on either side of them. Come on, this way. I can see the shed from here. We can make it if we run. Muldoon walks slowly as if he heard something. No, we can't. Why not? Because we're being hunted from the bushes straight ahead. Ellie turns very slowly to face the bushes. At first, she doesn't see anything, but then there's something very faint, like a shifting of the light, and a shadow seems to move in the bush, rustling the leaves. It's all right. Like hell it is! Muldoon raises his weapon slowly to his shoulder. Run towards the shed. I've got her. Ellie backs up down the path slowly. Muldoon follows behind her, keeping his gun trained in the bushes. The shadow in the bushes moves too, at an even pace with them. Go! Ellie, startled, turns and falls over a log. She quickly stands up and starts to run toward the shed. Muldoon walks slowly into the bushes. Ellie runs as fast as she possibly can. A real broken field sprint, hopping over branches, flying over the open area at top speed. Over a log, splash! She hits a water puddle. She comes to another log obstacle. She grabs a tree and swings over it. She nears the maintenance shed and doesn't look back. She reaches the door, blasts through it, and slams it behind her. A hand comes into the foreground and takes a firm grip on one of the tight fence cables. Another hand follows it, then a third. Grant, Tim, and Lex climb over the fence, pulling themselves up by the tension wires, crawling right past a danger sign that tells them this fence ought to be electrified. Malcolm and Hammond hover over a complex diagram of the maintenance shed that's spread out in front of them. Hammond clutches the radio in his hand, almost praying to it. Finally, it crackles. I'm in. Mr. Arnold? Mr. Arnold? Ellie is at the doorway of the maintenance shed, breathing hard from fear, listening to Hammond's voice on the radio. Great, good. Okay. Ahead of you there should be a metal stairway. Go down it. Ellie does, heading into the room, shining the flashlight ahead of her. There is a maze of pipes, ducts, and electrical work on both sides of her. Ellie walks straight ahead from the bottom of the metal stairs. Right. After 20 or 30 feet, you'll come to a T-junction. Take a left. John, just have her follow the main cable. I understand how to read a schematic. Ellie keeps walking, nervous as hell. She looks around. It is awfully dark down there. Going down the stairs. Okay. Damn it. Dead end. Wait a minute. There was a right back there somewhere. Malcolm takes over. Ellie, look above you. There should be a large bundle of cables and pipes all heading in the same direction. Follow that. Ellie looks up, finds the bundle of cables, and follows it into a main corridor. Ellie says into the radio. Piping, okay, following the piping, it goes back up the stairs and across the stairs, following the stairs. Mr. Arnold? He's not answering me. Okay, I'm on the grating. Good, keep going now. The cable will terminate in a big gray box. Okay, I'm following the tubing. I'm going down a passageway. How long does this stuff go for? Could you guys talk to me a little bit? Okay, I see the gray box. Ellie goes through a mesh gate and walks toward the gray box. It says, high voltage. She pushes the door open even further, revealing a vast array of breakers and switches inside. Now, Ellie, you can't just throw the main switch by hand. You've got to pump up the primer handle to give you a charge. It's a large, flat, gray... I see it! Grant and the kids swing over the top of the fence and start to climb down. Ellie pumps the gray handle, but it's sluggish. Above it, a small white indicator lays over the discharged to charged. Ellie slams the gray lever back into position. It's charged, okay? Right, now, under the words contact position, there's a green round button that says push to close. Push it. Ellie does. The contact position light chings over closed, and lights start to go on all over the panel. Did I do it? Is the power back on? Grant and Lex continue to climb down the fence. Tim is having difficulty. Just as he's about to take another step, he loses his footing and falls, and then regains control and hangs on.
Ellie watches as the column of 12 white indicator lights flashes on the control panel. They are clearly labeled, each one for a different area of the park. Now, Ellie, the red buttons turn on individual park systems. Switch them on. As Ellie punches the buttons, they light up, and our eyes go to the near end of the row. It's marked perimeter fence. Grant lets go of the fence, dropping the last few feet to the ground. Lex does the same. The warning light begins to flash, coming to life. Grant's eyes go wide. He looks up at Tim, who is still far up, near the top. In fact, he has come to a complete stop. Ellie keeps pushing the buttons. She's getting closer to the button for the fence. Tim, terrified, has frozen where he is. Tim, you have to let go! Ellie's still punching the buttons, now only a half a dozen away from the one for the fence. Now 5, now 3. Grant and Lex are both screaming at Tim. Come on, Tim, move down, damn it! Timmy, the power is coming down, let's go! I can't, I'm scared. Tim, you're gonna have to let go. I'm gonna count to 3. Jump, Timmy, it's too late. I'm afraid I'm gonna fall. Go, jump! You're crazy, I'm not gonna jump. Tim, you're gonna have to let go of the fence, Tim. Get down, right now, get off the fence, now! Do as he says, the power's coming back on, Timmy. Timmy, let's go, you're gonna have to let go. Count to 3, I'll catch you. Timmy, do as he says, Timmy. Do as Dr. Grant says, quick. Are you crazy? What if I miss? I hate it up here. Tim, I'm right here. Easy catch, count to 3. You're gonna get electrocuted, the power's coming back. Shut up, you're scaring me. Stop, you're scaring me. Shh, Tim, I'm right below you. Easy catch, 1, 2, 3. You count it yourself. 1, 2, 3. You're gonna get electrocuted. I'm gonna catch you. You let go. You do the counting, Tim. 1, 2, 3. You do all the counting, okay? Timmy, listen to Dr. Grant. I'm coming up there, Tim. I'm coming to get you. Lex, I've got to get him. Ellie finally pushes the button for the fences. It stops flashing and lights up a brilliant white. The fence hums as it awakens. Grant and Lex are screaming at Tim. Okay, I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2, 3. With a low, loud, frightening buzz, the fence comes alive. Pow! Tim is cut off mid-sentence and literally thrown from the fence. He slams into Grant. They fall to the ground. Lex runs over to them. Tim, you're okay? You're okay? Grant notices a larger problem. He's not breathing. Tim! Ellie watches as the banks of fluorescent lights in the maintenance shed come on one by one. The lights are going on in rows, coming closer and closer to her. Finally, her row comes on. She follows the light and sees a raptor, right there behind the control panel. It slashes, taking a lunging sweep at Ellie, but it gets stuck, its feet and legs tangled in the maze of pipes on the floor. This is our first good look at one of these things, and if it weren't so terrifying, we would admit that it is truly a thing of beauty. It's the biggest of the raptors, intensely muscled, coordinated as hell, a smoothly designed predator. Ellie shouts and falls back into the pipes on the other side of the aisle. The raptor untangles itself from the pipes and gives chase, just as Ellie slams the mesh door closed. The raptor bangs against the mesh door. Ellie falls to the ground. She holds on by kicking the door shut as the raptor continues to push himself through the door. Ellie is able to get the door closed. She stands and then falls back onto one of the walls. A dead arm falls onto her shoulder. Ray Arnold is there, or what's left of him, stuck in a tangle of pipes. Ellie moves away and his arm falls to the ground. She doesn't realize that she has moved right back near the mesh wall, and the raptor comes at her again. Ellie takes off running as fast as she can back the way she came. She drags the flashlight with her, running over the dead arm and Arnold's legs. She continues to run, her headset dangling, the flashlight dragging behind her on its cord. She reaches the stairs and hits them hard, flying up them. The raptor must be right behind her. She can hear clinking and clanging as it scrambles up the stairs, but she doesn't look back. She reaches the top, throws open the door, hurls herself outside, and slams the door behind her, just as the raptor's head snarls at her from near the top of the stairs.
She runs out to the fence and collapses. Tim is still unmoving. Grant is performing CPR, alternatively compressing Timmy's chest 15 times quickly and breathing into his mouth twice. Lex is freaking out. 15 compressions, 2 deep breaths. Come on, Tim. 15 compressions, 2 deep breaths. Timmy! Tim gasps and comes to. Ha! Good boy, Tim. Good boy. 3. Robert Muldoon creeps slowly through the jungle foliage, tracking his prey. He ducks and walks through a hollow log underneath a fallen tree, following the rustling sound up ahead of him. He can see just the trace of the raptor's gray flesh as it moves behind the bushes up ahead, staying camouflaged enough to deny him a decent shot. Thinking he's got a moment, Muldoon extends back the handle of the gun and clicks it into place. He prepares to take aim. A snake slithers across a tree branch, past what looks like a large iris of a flower. The flower blinks. It's the eye of the raptor. Muldoon sees it. He raises his gun. Instead of running away, the raptor rises slowly out of the bush, fully revealing itself to Muldoon, hissing at him. The corners of Muldoon's mouth twitch up into a smile. He draws a bead on the animal. His finger tenses on the trigger. Suddenly, his smile vanishes. Both eyes pop open, and a terrible thought sweeps across his face. His eyes flick to the side. Clever girl. Which is where the attack comes from. With a roar, another raptor comes flashing out of nowhere and pounces on him. The gun blasts, but wildly. The raptor claws slashes through Muldoon's midsection. Muldoon screams and falls back, the raptor locked on top of him, all tooth and claw all of a sudden. As the second raptor makes the kill, the first raptor strides slowly forward and watches approvingly. It throws its head back and snarls. Grant, Tim, and Lex come into the deserted visitor center. A large sign that says, "When dinosaurs ruled the earth," droops overhead. Grant now carries Tim, who is weakened but conscious. "Hello?" But nobody answers. Grant, Tim, and Lex come into the restaurant. Grant carefully sets Tim in a chair at one of the tables, Lex across from him. "I'm going out to find the others and get you to a doctor. Will you look after Tim, Lex?" Lex is scared as hell. "Yes." Grant nods. He looks at Tim for a second. "Your hair's all standing up." He gently rearranges Tim's hair, which is wild all over his head. Tim looks up at him weakly and manages a smile. Grant smiles back. "Big Tim, the human piece of toast." Tim laughs. Grant pauses for a second as if debating something. "Be back soon, guys, I promise." He leaves. As he goes across the lobby of the visitor center and outside, they can see his silhouette moving through a translucent mural that depicts dinosaurs in various natural settings. It's quiet for a second as Lex and Tim just look at each other. Tim goes across the room to an all-you-can-eat buffet on the other side and quickly piles some food on a tray. He brings it back to the table. Lex digs in, munching on veggies, grabbing food with 2 hands. Tim enjoys his food too. Lex comes up with a spoonful of lime jello from a plastic dinosaur egg cup, but her hand freezes halfway to her mouth. Tim looks up, sees the expression on her face. She's staring over his shoulder, eyes wide, the jello quivering in her shaking hands. "What?" Tim turns around. Behind him, one of the silhouettes on the mural is a raptor in a hunting pose. While they stare, the silhouette of a real raptor moves out from behind it and creeps forward in the lobby of the visitor's center. Lex pulls the shiny metal door shut as quietly as she can. It latches with a distinct click, but there is no lock. She runs to a panel of light switches and kills them all, plunging the room into semi-darkness. She helps Tim down an aisle and they hide at the end behind a counter, breathing hard. A raptor's head pops into view, visible through the round window in the middle of the restaurant door. It just looks for a moment, its breath steaming up the window. Through the window. As the steam evaporates, the raptor can see a part of Tim that is not entirely hidden by the counter. Tim and Lex remain frozen in fear as the raptor first sniffs at the bottom of the door, then thumps its head against it, but the door doesn't budge. Grant walks quietly down the narrow path towards Hammond's compound, eyes darting from side to side, not exactly sure where he's going. From far off, he hears someone shouting to him. He turns. He sees Ellie standing outside the bunker. She's waving to him, shouting something too faint for him to hear. He furrows his brow and walks toward her. She shouts louder. He walks faster. He's closer now, and he can make out what she's shouting. Run! Grant takes off running towards her, not even looking back. He races up, and she runs into his arms. Where are the kids? John Hammond stands between Grant and Ellie in the bunker, watching as Grant racks the bolts on a 10-gauge shotgun. It's just 2 raptors, right? You're sure the third one's contained? Yes, unless they figured out how to open doors. The raptor stares down at the kitchen handle, cocking its head curiously. It snarls and bumps the door handle with its head, but it doesn't do anything. It reaches out toward the handle with one clawed hand. Tim and Lex stare in shock as the door handle starts to turn. The door opens. The first raptor stands in the doorway, drawing itself up to full height, and looks around the kitchen. Now, a second raptor joins in the doorway. They move into the room, brushing against each other. The first raptor snaps at the second, as if to say, keep your distance. Now the raptors split, taking 2 different aisles. Tim and Lex crawl away, Tim awfully weak now, down a third aisle, around the other side of the counter from the raptors, moving in the opposite direction. As Tim and Lex pass the raptors, one of the raptors' tails smack into some pots and pans, knocking them off the counter. They fall on the kids, who manage to keep quiet. The kids keep moving as one of the raptors dips down, looks through an open cabinet to inspect the racket. Tim and Lex reach the end of the aisle and round a corner, but Timmy's falling behind now and he accidentally brushes against some hanging kitchen utensils. Both raptors turn. One jumps onto the counter, knocking more kitchen stuff to the floor. A ladle clatters to a stop, and the strange metallic sound confuses the raptors for a moment. But then, they move in Tim's direction, sniffing, heading right for him. The raptor on the floor is just about to turn the corner where Tim sits, exposed and exhausted, but both the raptors suddenly stop, hearing a clicking sound from the other side of the aisle. It's Lex, tapping a spoon on the floor to distract them. The raptor on the counter jumps down and starts cautiously towards Lex's noise, leaving Tim. Lex sees a steel cabinet behind her. Its sliding door slid up and open. She crawls inside, silently. Tim sees the raptors making the turn towards Lex, smashing more stuff around with their tails. He turns and sees a walk-in freezer in the far wall with a pin-locking handle. As Lex tries to pull the overhead door to the cabinet shut, one of the raptors rounds a corner, sees her reflection on a shiny cabinet front. Lex tries frantically to lower the cabinet door, but it's stuck. Tim takes a few deep breaths, summons what little strength he has, and makes a break for the walk-in freezer. He's limping, dragging himself, really moving like a wounded prey now, and the other raptor spots him. Both raptors go into a pre-attack crouch, and they pounce, one towards each of the kids. Lex tugs on the cover to the avail. Tim's raptor charges after him, just open floor space between them. Lex's raptor thuds into a shiny surface bearing her reflection. It chased the wrong image. It sags to the floor, semi-conscious. At the other end of the aisle, the real Lex screams as the other raptor bears down on Tim. Tim reaches the freezer, rips the door open, and falls inside. The floor is cold and slick, and his feet go right out from under him. He sprawls across the floor, rolls out of the way, and the raptor slips and falls into the freezer too, right past him. Tim drags himself to his feet and out of the freezer. The raptor makes one last lunge, right on Tim's heels, its mouth wide open. But Lex slams the door shut just as Tim is clear. The raptor's head is caught for a second, but it snarls, retreats, and Lex gets the door shut all the way. The raptor roars and screams inside. Lex jams the pin through the handle, locking it in. Now the other raptor staggers to its feet. Groggy, it smashes into stuff all over the kitchen. Lex throws her arms around Tim again for support and they take off. Tim and Lex hurry across the restaurant. They stare back over their shoulders as they run. They crash into Grant and Ellie. "It's in there! Control room!" Grant, Ellie, and the kids race down the second-floor corridor toward the control room, Grant helping Tim. The door to the control room smacks open. Grant, Ellie, and the kids burst in. Ellie heads straight for Nedry's computer terminal. Grant moves Tim to the side and races back to the door to lock it. "We can call for help!" "We've got to reboot the system first." Ellie sits at the computer and studies the screen. It's flashing to her, dominated by a maze-like grid. She studies it, confused. Grant says, "Oh no! The door locks, Ellie! Boot up the door locks! Boot up the door locks!" Pow! Something hits the door hard from the outside. The kids scream. Grant hurls his back against it. Grant loses his gun. He struggles. The raptor scratches his head. "Alan!" Ellie jumps out of the chair and races over to the door to help him. A raptor snarls and snaps, ramming itself into the door, trying to force its way into the control room. It's all Ellie and Grant can do to hold the door against the onslaught, but it bucks against them viciously. "Ellie, get back and boot up the door locks." "You can't hold it by yourself." "Ellie, try to reach the gun." "I can't get it." Lex slides quickly into the command chair at Nedry's terminal. She stares at the screen for a moment. "It's a Unix system. I know this. It's the files for the whole park. It's like a phone book. It tells you everything." Then her fingers start to fly over the keyboard. Tim watches, amazed, as the computer starts to respond to Lex's commands. "I've got to find the right file. Oh no, this isn't right. No, this isn't it either. Come on, Lex, go, Lexi." Reaching another menu, Lex spots a box on the screen that reads, "Door Integrity." She reaches out and touches it. The screen beeps. "There it is! I got it! Yeah, that's it! I did it!" The door latch panel buzzes. Grant and Ellie put everything they have into it, and finally the door snicks shut, locking the raptor outside. "What works?" "Phone security systems, everything works. You asked for it, we got it." The phone rings. Hammond and Malcolm look at each other, wide-eyed. Hammond lunges for it. "Grant, the children all right?" All the screens in the control room have come alive now. Data is scrolling by at incredible speed as every remaining system in the park comes back online. Ellie is at the keyboard with Lex now, figuring things out, and Grant is on the phone. The children are fine. Hammond is on the phone. Malcolm is trying to listen. "Thank God." "Listen, the phones are back up. Call the mainland. Tell them to send damn helicopters." Suddenly, Grant stops in the middle of his sentence. A scream cuts in, and then 3 gunshots, fast, and a horrible clunking as the phone is dropped. "Grant! Grant!" Grant's rifle lies on the floor, smoking. Several spent shells alongside it. The front window of the control room has 3 huge impact shatter patterns in the glass where the gunshots hit. Tim goes into an open panel through the ceiling, into a crawl space. Lex climbs the ladder, followed by Ellie and Grant. Grant looks over to the front window, scared as hell, just as it shatters in a shower of glass and a raptor explodes into the control room. It lands on its feet at a workstation console, images from wall projectors falling across its head. Grant vaults himself into the ceiling and knocks the ladder with his feet. The raptor tilts its head curiously, looking up at the swaying ceiling. Grant, Ellie, and the kids dash across the ceiling panels, moving fast, but carefully, so as to not break through. Smash! The raptor's head bursts through a panel behind them, leaping up at them, snarling and snapping. It drops down again, and they keep moving forward, but now it erupts through a panel right in front of them. They scream. Its teeth click just inches in front of Ellie. But the raptor can't hold itself up there, and it falls back to the floor of the control room. Grant looks around frantically and spots an air duct a few yards away. "Follow me!" They move for it, but the raptor's head crashes through the ceiling again, this time right underneath Lex. She screams and is lifted up on top of its head and pinned to the ceiling above. Grant smashes his boot into the side of the raptor's head. The raptor slams at him, latching onto his boot for a second before the raptor's own weight pulls it back down. Lex goes down with the raptor, spinning down into the hole of the ceiling, tumbling down. Grant grabs her by the collar at the last second, but Lex dangles there above the raptor. The animal flips over onto its feet and crouches to pounce, just as Grant summons his strength and jerks Lex back into the ceiling. The raptor springs, but too late. Grant and Lex scramble over to the air duct and join Ellie and Tim inside it. Grant, Ellie, and the kids crawl through the air duct as fast as they can, the thin metal booming and creasing around them. They reach a metal gate that shows daylight beneath. Grant reaches out and pulls it up. Through the gate, they can see the lobby of the visitor center below. They're directly above the skeletons of the dinosaurs, the T-Rex, and the sauropod it's attacking. The unfinished skeletons are surrounded by scaffolding. Grant and the others climb down out of the air duct and onto the platform of the scaffolding that stands alongside the skeletons. They continue down to the second platform, and then the third. They suddenly see a raptor, standing to the side by the second floor railing. It's much too far to jump to the lobby floor, so Grant climbs gingerly onto the nearest skeleton, the towering brachiosaur. They climb down as fast as they can. Grant helps Tim down. Lex and Ellie follow. Ellie goes to the tail. Lex moves to the front. Grant lands on the main body in the middle with Tim, and the raptor watches them. Up in the ceiling, the skeleton's anchor bolt groan in the plaster, starting to pull free, but for now they hold. The raptor flies out and lands on the back of the middle section of the skeleton. Snap! It cracks apart with the weight, sending the sections spinning in all different directions. Grant and Tim twirl on the middle section. Tim begins to slide down. Grant tries to hold on to him, but Tim loses his grip and falls to the ground right underneath the swinging large middle section of the dinosaur skeleton. Meanwhile, Lex spins on the front section. She slips and tries to keep from falling as she hangs by her legs. The anchor bolt in the ceiling rips free, zinging past them like bullets. The entire brachiosaur skeleton collapses like a house of cards, sending Ellie to the ground. She covers herself with her arms, trying to protect her head from the shower of falling bones. Lex falls, landing on the ground with bones falling on top of her. She screams. Grant, alone in the middle section, looks up and sees the cable about to snap. He falls. The large section of the skeleton comes careening down, heading straight for Tim, who lays there where he fell on the ground. It comes smashing down, with just enough space for him to be safe. The raptor tumbles to the floor in a cascade of splintering bone. It lands on its back a few yards away and staggers for a moment, the wind knocked out of it. Grant lands in front of Tim. He stands and goes to Tim. Lex sits up and sees the raptor regaining its feet. She screams. Ellie stands. She notices the shadows of the second raptor, standing beneath the Visqueen. She stops dead in her tracks. She backs up toward Grant and Tim. The raptor comes out from under the plastic and looks around. Grant gets Tim out from under the skeleton. Lex joins them. They back away from the raptor, approaching from the left side. They back up toward the large rock in the middle of the room holding the other skeleton. The raptors crouch in their pre-attack stance. The group is caught in the middle of two approaching raptors. Lex looks back and screams. Grant and the others continue to back up. They look up and see Tyrannosaurus Rex, its massive head descending down from above. A set of 6-foot jaws clamp down on the raptor. 18-inch teeth sink into its side, and the helpless animal howls in agony as it's lifted up off the floor of the lobby. Grant and the others look up in stunned amazement. They step back behind the rock for safety and look to the right. They see another raptor approaching. The other raptor goes up in the air now, 20 feet off the lobby floor, held fast in the mouth of the Rex. It stands in the entrance to the lobby, in front of the massive hole it ripped through the Visqueen wall. It shakes its enormous head once, breaking the neck of the velociraptor, then drops it dead to the floor at its feet. Grant, Ellie, and the kids skirt the battle royale on the lobby floor and dash to the door of the visitor center.
The second raptor turns from the humans and lunges at the Rex's side, leaping 12 feet into the air and rending the Rex's flesh as it comes down, slashing it open with its 6-inch claws. The Rex bellows in pain and turns on the raptor, eyes raging, and strikes, just once, quickly, as fast as the head of a serpent. It catches the raptor by thick back end, but one of its enormous feet downs on it and tears. It rips the last velociraptor in half. The T-Rex whirls around as it turns, its heavy tail counterbalance, snapping the other way, sweeping across the lobby, and smashing right through the T-Rex skeleton. The skeleton collapses in an explosion of bones, falling to pieces around the living Rex. The Rex stands majestically in the middle of the lobby. Both skeletons swept away, snapping like matchsticks as they settle around the animal. The Rex draws itself up to its full height and roars. The sound is deafening, and the vibrations rattle the entire visitor center. The sign which dangled over the lobby by its one remaining wire finally falls, clattering to the floor at the Rex's feet, face up. When dinosaurs ruled the earth, it says. Hammond squeals the Jeep to a halt in front of the steps. Malcolm is lying in the back. Grant and the others practically fall into the Jeep. "Mr. Hammond, I've decided not to endorse your park." "After careful consideration, Dr. Grant, so have I." Hammond hits the gas, and the Jeep takes off. The helicopter rotors whirl to life as the chopper waits on the landing cross. 2 Jeeps roar up next to it, one driven by Grant, the other by Hammond. One by one they climb aboard, their faces white from their ordeal. Ellie comes on first holding Lex, then Hammond carrying Tim, and Grant helping Malcolm. No one speaks. Hammond takes another look at his dream. Grant comes over and takes him back to the helicopter. The helicopter takes off immediately. As they rise into the air, they stare out the windows, looking down on the park as it spreads out below. The helicopter soars over a vast plain. The tyrannosaur, which is still feeding on the remains of the dinosaur it ran down and killed, looks up. It throws its head back and roars, waving its little forelimbs at the strange thing in frustration. As the helicopter moves off, the T-Rex just stares, silently, with huge yellowing eyes. It's a moment of utter bewilderment for the Rex, and we almost feel sad for her. Hammond looks down at the park, his eyes full. He looks over at the kids. They're in the back of the helicopter with Grant. As they look out the window, Grant almost absently has his arms around both kids. Now Ellie looks at him. Both he and the kids seem so natural, so obviously comfortable and trusting with each other. She smiles. The 4 of them sit that way in the back of the helicopter, huddled together. Survivors. Grant looks out the window. The helicopter sweeps low over a huge flock of seabirds that's feeding on a huge school of fish. As the chopper roars near, it kicks up the flock. Hundreds of birds sail off in all directions, powerful and graceful. Grant looks at the birds and breaks into a wide grin. The birds reform and flock again, then fly straight into the sun. This has been Jurassic Park, 1993. Thank you for listening. Before I sign out, just a few more notes. I decide which movies to read the scripts of by the comments on my videos. So if you'd like a certain movie to be read, please leave it in a comment below. If you enjoyed the choice of reading this time, or the quality of this video in general, please hit the like button, as it helps others